Chapter 221. Damn fatty. He didn't even defend himself. Is he courting death? Everyone was in an uproar, as if they thought that Jianglu had been defeated. After all, his opponent was quite famous in the inner yard and was very strong. However, what happened next left everyone dumbfounded. Jianglu stood there unscathed under the sword. He was dumbfounded. Touching his chest, he asked in a daze, "You purposely went easy on me?" When his opponent heard this, he was even more dumbfounded, as if he was in a mess. Go easy? What a joke. That was an all-out attack. You're too arrogant. At this moment, Jianglu's opponent was enraged. With a roar, his spiritual power burst out and condensed on the long sword. The sharp sword vibrated like a green dragon, and the sword light was more than 7 feet long. The air around him was distorted. Under the vibration of the sword light, the ground of the arena cracked. Is he serious this time? Jianglu was fully focused. The spiritual power in his body covered his body like a battle suit. Of course, Jianglu did not know that the previous sword attack was already his opponent's all-out attack, Ice Dragon Smash. At this moment, accompanied by a long roar, his opponent slashed out with his sword. The sword light was like frost and turned into a giant dragon in the middle of the way. The dragon's roar shook the arena, and the frost was rampant. The arena was covered with a layer of frost. Jianglu calmed down. Adhering to the idea of stalling for time, he did not make a move. With all his spiritual power protecting his body, coupled with the power of the Archean sacred body, he thought that he could block the sword. However, when the sword fell on Jianglu's body, he realized that he was wrong. The seemingly incomparably powerful sword seemed to be able to pierce through everything. However, when it fell on Jianglu's body, it could not even break through his protective spiritual power. At this moment, Jianglu was furious. He stared at his opponent with a dark face and roared, "Are you looking down on me? You've gone easy on me again and again. Are you looking down on me?" His opponent was confused and even more confused. Go easy on me? Brother, are you mistaken? I used up all my spiritual power in that attack just now. Jianglu's opponent wanted to cry, but had no tears. He was even more ashamed and angry. He had clearly used all of his strength and exhausted all of his spirit energy to unleash his strongest attack. But in the end, even Jianglu's protective spiritual power couldn't be broken. How were they supposed to fight? I admit defeat. At that moment, the young man's face darkened as he directly admitted defeat. What? That's it? Jianglu's eyes widened in surprise. What happened to stalling for time? Before he even made a move, his opponent had already admitted defeat. How were they supposed to play? Boss, you can't blame me for this, right? Jianglu looked depressed as he looked at Jiang Chun with an innocent look on his face. Sigh. What could Jiang Chun say? He could only let out a long sigh. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame Jianglu's opponent for being too weak. I'll take you on. At this moment, another youth rushed into the ring. Ranked 3rd in the inner yard, Wang Zhan, upper-level honorable realm. Martial honorable. Many people cried out in surprise because Wang Zhan was quite famous in the inner courtyard. His strength was not only in his strength, but also in his physical body. Wang Zhan, crush this damn fatty. Yes. Use your tyrannical body to flatten him. The crowd screamed, and their eyes burned with passion. They believed that Wang Zhan would definitely win this battle. At this moment, Jiang Chun and the others had strange expressions on their faces. In terms of physical body, apart from Jiang Chun, who else could compare with Jianglu? The reputation of the sacred body of the Archean era was not just for show. Damn fatty, I haven't fought for a long time. You should feel honored to be defeated by me today. Wang Zhan raised his eyebrows and looked arrogant, as if he was unbeatable. Jianglu smiled and touched the back of his head, saying, I'm really honored. Humph! Wang Zhan snorted lightly. Then he took a step forward and punched out. The fist radiance was like a field of starlight. His entire arm was filled with divine light. It was as if his entire body was enveloped by starlight, making him look extraordinarily sacred. The star technique. Wang Zhan actually succeeded in cultivating the stellar art? This is one of the most difficult cultivation techniques in the Square Divine Institute. Once mastered, one can fight with starlight. Not only can one defend against enemies, but one can also kill them. It can be said to be a cultivation technique that combines defense and offense into one. The crowd exclaimed in surprise. However, Jianglu was very calm. There was a hint of contempt hidden under his honest smile. He stood in place and did not move at all. It was as if he had been scared silly. Even when Wang Zhan's fist landed on his body, he did not react at all. The entire arena was covered by starlight, making it impossible for the crowd to see the situation of Jianglu and Wang Zhan. However, in the crowd's hearts, Jianglu would definitely lose. Bang! Bang! Under the starlight, the crowd could not see the scene in the arena. However, they could hear the muffled sounds. They guessed that Wang Zhan was beating up Jianglu. At least, that was what the crowd thought. However, before the starlight dissipated, Wu Xian said, "Jianglu wins." What? Impossible. Dean Wu Xian, did you see wrongly? The crowd did not believe it. After all, Wang Zhan's strength was obvious, and he had mastered the star technique. This cultivation technique that combined defense and offense was extremely powerful. What? He really lost? When the starlight dissipated, someone exclaimed in surprise. In the arena, Wang Zhan's body twitched and fell to the ground. As for Jianglu, he was still standing in the same place. Not even a corner of his body was broken. This, Wang Zhan? What's going on? The crowd was dumbfounded. Someone as powerful as Wang Zhan was defeated? They did not know how Wang Zhan was defeated. A defeat is a defeat. I admit defeat. Wang Zhan's face darkened. He struggled to get up from the ground and walk down the arena. However, some people were not convinced. They did not believe it. Wang Zhan, did you receive any benefits? Did you go easy on him? We didn't see the battle clearly just now. Tell me clearly, how did you lose? Otherwise, we won't let you go. The crowd threatened Wang Zhan. Some people even blocked the arena. At this moment, Wang Zhan's face darkened. I was seriously injured by my own attack. At the edge of the arena, Wang Zhan was silent for a while. Then, he told the truth with a darkened face. What? In an instant, the people below the stage were dumbfounded, and the spectators were even more confused. He was not defeated by Jianglu, but was seriously injured by his own attack? Boss, I didn't do it on purpose. At this moment, Jianglu said weakly with an aggrieved face, I didn't do anything. After his attack hit me, it was reflected back. Really? I swear, I didn't even move a finger. This is not your fault. Jiang Chun smiled bitterly. Indeed, it was not Jianglu's fault. Jiang Chun could see that in order to stall for time, Jianglu would rather not do anything but stand in the same place and take the beating. If he had made a move, the battle would have ended long ago. Wang Zhan would not have had a chance to attack. Chapter 2:22. The fact that Wang Zhan was injured by his own attack was already very embarrassing. If he hadn't been forced to do so, how could he have said it? Now, not only had Wang Zhan lost, but his reputation had also been damaged. How could he have a foothold in the Quadrant Divine Institute in the future? Jianglu, just you wait. Wang Zhan was humiliated and angry, and he threw his anger at Jianglu. Jianglu gave a simple and honest smile, nodded and said, Well, I'm waiting. At this moment, after Jianglu won another match, no one else challenged him. After all, no one was a fool. Jianglu might have won a match because he was lucky. But if he won another match, how could it be luck? Moreover, his opponent in the second match was Wang Zhan, who had mastered the star technique. The most terrifying thing was that Jianglu hadn't made a move in these two matches. He had won without a fight. Why is Jiang Chen's group so strong? They're not strong. Maybe we're a little weak. Many people were discussing in low voices, and it wasn't until a long time later that they came to a conclusion. That was, Jiang Chen's group was strong, and they were weak. In this way, this group of inner court disciples was even more determined that they had to join forces to deal with Jiang Chen's group during the Battle Royale. Otherwise, what would this Quadrant Divine Institute competition have to do with them? The challenge went on, but no one dared to challenge Jiang Chun and his companions. 6 hours later, in the afternoon, the second part of the Quadrant Divine Institute competition had ended. Thus, it was time to welcome the last segment of the second part, the Battle Royale. Those who had advanced would be mixed together and participate in a Battle Royale. Moreover, during the Battle Royale, they could join forces or fight alone. At this moment, Jiang Chen's expression was slightly solemn as he walked up the stage with Hualian's support. The backlash hasn't disappeared. Jiang Chun sighed inwardly. Now, he could only use the art of Nirvana to protect himself. However, although the art of Nirvana's defense was extremely strong, it wouldn't last long if it was attacked by many people. In this battle, Jiang Chun understood that he was going to become enemies with all the inner court disciples. Jiang Chun, ever since you entered the Quadrangle Divine Courtyard, you've been keeping a high profile. You've even caused a great commotion in the Quadrangle Divine Courtyard. Even the headmaster of the Heavenly Court is willing to go against the Martial Pavilion for you. I really don't know who you are, but we know that you will definitely lose today's battle. I'm so excited. It feels so good to be able to trample a genius like you under my feet. At this moment, Jiang Chun and the others were standing on the side of the enormous arena, and the other inner court disciples were standing opposite them. All of the disciples who had advanced to the next round had joined forces. Some people were mocking them, some were provoking them, and some were even looking at Bai Fengyu and the others with greedy looks. Boss, the other side has too many people. Jiang Lu frowned. The difference in numbers between the two sides was several times. Even Nian Chang's expression was much more dignified. What else can we do? We'll just have to endure it. Jiang Chun sighed. I must enter the top 4 of the 4 courtyard tournament. Otherwise, find me a good place, dig a hole, build a grave, and wait to bury me. You're my woman. I'll definitely let you enter the top 4. Master, if you enter the top 4, you'll have to sleep with me. Master, I'll try my best. Jiang Chun was already used to the way Bai Fengyu and the other two expressed their opinions. As for Mo Xingtian, Nian Chang'e, Jiang Lu, and the others, they didn't say anything. This was because at this point, words had already lost all meaning. Only by winning would there be hope. It's fine as long as you can enter the top 4. It doesn't matter if I enter or not. Nian Chang'e's eyes narrowed. So, for this battle, I'll give it my all. Give it your all. For Master. After a dozen breaths, both sides finished adjusting. Then, with Wu Xian's command, the battle royale began. Kill. Fight. More and more growls could be heard. 10-odd martial venerables dashed toward Jiang Chun and his companions. They were full of vigorous vigor and strong spiritual power. They were all wrapped in strong spiritual power. Behind them, the martial venerables and martial kings were constantly forming seals. All kinds of spells were colorful. Like auspicious clouds descending from the sky, they pressed down on Jiang Chun and the others. There were also swords, sabers, and arrows shooting through the air. There were also formations and talismans, shining like the brilliance of stars. 36 lotuses, seal of 10,000 techniques. Nian Chang'e stood beside Jiang Chun and formed seals with both hands. In her eyes, there was a lotus floating up and down. Terrifying mental energy burst out from her body, and the 36 lotuses bloomed above her head. His spiritual power fused with the 36 lotuses, and an obscure wave of energy exploded forth, sealing away all of the spell techniques in the sky. Even the martial venerables and martial kings lost their ability to move at this moment. Their mental energy was suppressed by Nian Chang'e. This is all I can do. Nian Chang'e spoke softly. Unable to move, she had to focus on restraining the martial kings and martial venerables. Otherwise, the spells in the sky would be enough to kill Jiang Chun and the others. All of you don't move. At the same time, Jiang Lu rushed to the front. A terrifying blood qi overflowed into the sky, like a giant beast from ancient times. On his body, a reddish-gold light flickered. His attacks were wide open, and he even used sovereign descents. With his strength alone, He blocked all the martial kings and martial venerables in the middle of the arena. At the same time, Mo Xingtian's figure disappeared on the spot, and he secretly moved toward the people with formations and talismans. I seal, river encirclement. Bai Fingyu's hair danced wildly, and her eyes were snow-white. The power of Yin exploded, and frost spread around her. A large river appeared out of nowhere and surrounded Jiang Chun and the others. Then, the large river froze and turned into a huge barrier, protecting Jiang Chun and the others. Then, Bai Fengyu rushed out, and her spiritual energy and the power of Yin turned into an ice crystal sword. She rushed to the middle of the arena, and together with Jiang Lu, they fought fiercely with the martial kings and martial venerables. Go! At this moment, Hua Lianyi shouted, and two doors opened behind her. In an instant, two battle spirits rushed out from the doors. One was an upper sword venerable, and the other was an upper saber venerable. Under Hua Lianyi's control and command, the two battle spirits were as fierce as tigers, and they pushed forward. Whoosh! Whoosh! And at this moment, at the end of the other party's attack, a sharp sword formed from spiritual energy shot towards Jianglu and the others like a black cloud. This was an attack from an upper venerable arrow. Be careful! Jiang Chun was powerless. He sat on the ground and could only remind them. Yo, venerable arrow! Nayland Mayer giggled and stood beside Jiang Chun. Her graceful figure was already dancing. As the battle dance rose, a few rays of light fell on Jiang Lu and the others. It was as if they were wearing battle clothes. Their blood boiled, and their spiritual energy surged. The sharp arrows that filled the sky seemed extremely fierce, but they were unable to break through the battle clothes on their bodies. Moreover, with the support of the battle dance, the battle strength of Jiang Lu and the others became even more terrifying. Let's get rid of that battle dancer first. Damn it, it's actually a battle dancer. Chapter 223. The occupation of war dancer was rare in the first place. Many people didn't know what its significance was and what its power was. However, there were still people in the Quadrangle Divine Institutes who knew the terror of war dancers. In a one-on-one situation, a war dancer's combat strength might not be strong. However, in a group battle, a war dancer was equivalent to a dozen. Focus, heart-piercing. At this moment, a long howl came from behind the arena. Immediately after, the thousands of sharp arrows in the air condensed into one. The thumb-sized arrow was enveloped in divine light and emitted a cold light. It was also suffused with a layer of mentality. Whoosh! The sound of air being torn apart suddenly sounded. The sharp arrow shot out like a comet, flying toward Nayland Mayer. Be careful! Dodge quickly! Jiang Chun and the others cried out in alarm and hurriedly reminded. However, Nayland Mayer had already started her battle dance, so how could she stop it so easily? There was a process involved. Poof! Just as the arrow was about to pierce Nayland Mayer, a lotus leaf fell and blocked in front of Nayland Mayer like a shield. Boom! With the explosion, the lotus leaf shattered and the wind blew. Nayland Mayer even retreated more than a dozen steps and almost fell off the arena. Fortunately, her injuries were very light. She was only grazed a little. On the other hand, Nian Chang'e spat out a mouthful of blood, which dyed her clothes red. That lotus leaf was Nian Chang'e's Tao, Soul, 36 Lotus. Although the lotus leaf could be recovered after being shattered, Nian Chang'e was already injured during the recovery process. His spiritual energy was instantly weakened by a large amount. This caused many spell sovereigns and spell kings, who were originally suppressed by him, to charge out. In an instant, spell techniques formed in the air. They were colorful like a gorgeous mountain and river, falling toward Jiang Chun and the others. Are you okay? Jiang Chun asked. I'm fine. I can still hold on for a while. Nian Chang'e's eyes narrowed. As he spoke, he still spat out blood. It was obvious that he was severely injured. The Tao soul was closely related to the body. It was like a second soul. Even if it was only a broken lotus leaf, it was already a serious injury for Nian Chang'e. However, Nian Chang'e did not stop. After a few breaths, his spiritual power burst out again. Wang! In an instant, the Dharma sovereigns and Dharma kings who had broken free from the suppression were once again suppressed by Nian Chang'e. Their newly formed Dharma spells were all destroyed. Stop! Jiangchen was alarmed. He could feel that Nian Chang'e's aura was getting weaker and weaker, and her injuries were getting worse and worse. Obviously, Nian Chang'e was risking her life. If you don't enter the top 4, you will die, Nian Chang'e said in a deep voice. If you continue like this, even if you don't die, you will be seriously injured. Jiang Chun shook his head and said, "Forget it, Count. If I let it go just like that, why would I bother to make a move?" Nian Chang'e's mouth was full of blood, but she smiled happily and said, "You're my first friend, aren't you?" "I." Jiang Chun opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. After all, he was not a person who was good with words and didn't know what to say to thank someone. However, Jiang Chun knew that Nian Chang'e was a person who was worth befriending, a person who was worth risking his life for. 8-directional seal. Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind the other party. In an instant, the air around Jianglu and the others distorted, and black chains appeared out of thin air. The chains spread out in all directions like a long dragon, imprisoning Jianglu and Bai Fengyu's bodies. Boom! Boom! Just at that instant, dozens of attacks descended and blasted Bai Fengyu away, causing him to fall off the stage. She fainted on the spot, and her injuries were extremely serious. As for Zhang Lu, although his physical body was extremely strong, he couldn't withstand so many attacks. Although Zhang Lu was still standing in the arena, his entire body was covered in wounds, and blood had already dyed his clothes red. There was even a pool of blood under his feet, and it was a ghastly sight. I said, "Don't move!" Zhang Lu narrowed his eyes and burned the essence blood in his body. The power of the immemorial sacred body completely erupted. His body burned with a layer of golden flames, and his injuries healed in an instant. Immemorial sacred body? I see. I should have realized it earlier. Outside the arena, Wu Xian looked a little surprised. He smiled bitterly and said, "I was wrong. If this little guy knew, he would be very happy, right?" At this moment, Jiang Lu's 4 limbs danced, shaking off the chains on his body. He punched straight out, and like a bright sun, it exploded in the crowd. On the spot, 3 martial kings were sent flying, and before they landed on the ground, they had already fainted. There were also 2 upper martial honors who were knocked to the ground, unable to get up for a long time. "Let's see how many times you can break free." A cold voice resounded. Zhang Lu saw chains appear around him once again. Furthermore, there were 16 of them this time. Buzz! The air was distorted, and the sealing power, like a burning rune, was imprinted into Jiang Lu's body. The 16 chains wrapped around Jiang Lu's body, and a sealing power erupted, as if to seal the power of Jiang Lu's immemorial sacred body. "Enough! Come back!" When Jiang Chun saw this, he hurriedly shouted. He did not hide the worry in his eyes. He knew that Jiang Lu was burning his blood essence to fight. This way of fighting would not last for long. Moreover, it would cause great damage to his body. What's more, the person hiding behind the crowd was a sealing master. Once Jiang Lu's power was sealed, what awaited him would be defeat and serious injury. "Boss, I can't listen to you this time." Jiang Lu turned around and grinned. His teeth and lips were covered in blood. Sovereign's descent. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Lu roared and took 6 steps forward. With each step, the chains on his body would break. It wasn't until the 6th step that all the chains on his body were broken. Even the martial kings and martial honors in front of him were sent flying by the force of the 6 steps, and all of them fainted. Puff! However, Jiang Lu fell down at this moment. One man was able to hold back 10,000 men. Jiang Lu had done it. However, he was seriously injured in this battle. "You're really disobedient," Jiang Chun said softly. Suddenly, he chuckled. "Since you're so willful, as your boss, I should be willful too. Otherwise, how can I avenge your and Bai Fengyu's injuries?" As soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Chen waved his hand, and the everlasting love appeared. After using the power of the immortal bird Taoist soul to forcefully suppress the backlash in his body, Jiang Chen's body finally had a weak force and a wisp of mental strength. And that was enough. What are you doing? The power of the backlash hasn't disappeared yet. Do you want to die by attacking like this? Nianchanga saw it clearly. She was anxious and tried to dissuade him. Compared to my life, I care more about you guys, Jiang Chen said softly. He held the everlasting love and placed it beside his mouth. Then he started to play a song. Chapter 2:24. The first song of the everlasting love spell, Never Leaving. Never leaving is also separation. As the sound of the flute rose, invisible sound waves rippled in the air. The sound of the flute was gentle and tranquil, like a lullaby. However, such a tranquil sound of the flute was like a clap of thunder in the ears of the audience, especially those who majored in spiritual power. The moment the sound of the flute entered their ears, their state of mind calmed down. Not only that, but even the spiritual power in their bodies were like stagnant water, silent and still. Some of them were even in a trance, as if their souls and bodies had been separated. They stood there in a daze. At this moment, Mo Xingtian attacked like a ghost. Wherever he passed, those who were in a trance and unable to fight were knocked unconscious by his palm. Occasionally, one or two of them could withstand his palm, but Mo Xingtian would follow up with another palm. Under Never Leaving, there was nothing that could not be solved with one palm. If there was, he would use two palms. Spell formations, barriers rise. This flute sound is killing me. What are you doing? Raise the spell formations and barriers. After a few breaths, even those who majored in physical strength could not take it anymore and urged the spell formations and barriers to rise. However, those spell formation masters and barrier masters were all dumbfounded. Their spiritual power had been suppressed by chanting Chang'e, and now they were entranced by Never Leaving. At this moment, even their consciousness was fading. Bang! Bang! After a series of muffled sounds, Mo Xingtian continued to attack, knocking out dozens of people who majored in spiritual power and kicking them out of the arena. At the same time, Jianglu stood up again. His body was covered in flames, and the reddish-gold light was like the sun. The power of the sacred body burned again, and his injuries healed rapidly. What the F***, CK? He can't be killed? This recovery, isn't it too much? The group of martial kings and martial venerables were shocked beyond words. He had been so severely injured that it was difficult for him to even stand. Now he could stand up again after a short while. Everyone regretted it. If they had known this would happen, they would have thrown Jianglu out of the arena when he was down. Now, this thing has come up again. Let's fight again. At this moment, Jianglu went berserk. His entire body flickered with a scarlet gold radiance. His attacks were wide open, without the slightest bit of fanciness. His attacks were simple and violent. Every punch and palm strike was accompanied by the sound of wind and thunder. On the other side, Nayland Mayer danced while Jiang Chun played the music. It was a perfect match. Those who specialize in spiritual power have all been beaten up. Nianchanga put away the 36 lotuses. His face was pale as he sat down on the ground. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and said, "Let's play a song together?" Jiang Chun didn't say anything. He just nodded silently. Then, Nianchanga waved his hand, and the zither licho floated in front of him. His 10 fingers danced on the zither strings, and an extremely violent zither sound erupted. Jiang Chun glanced at Nianchanga in surprise, thinking that this guy seemed to be very aggrieved. This attack was so violent. Nianchanga had probably suffered a lot in this 4 Academy assembly. Thinking about it carefully, that was indeed the case. If not for helping Jiang Chun to buy time with Nianchanga's character, he wouldn't have participated in the 4 Academy assembly at all. He wouldn't have been restrained in the 4 Academy assembly. Moreover, he had hurt his own Tao soul. Now that Nianchanga had finally recovered, he naturally had to vent his anger. The competition in the inner yard hasn't ended yet. What's going on? Is there a concert? Not long after, youths appeared around the inner yard training hall. Some were from the outer yard, some were from the earth yard, and of course, there were also a few geniuses from the heavenly yard. They were all winners in their respective yards. At this moment, they came to the inner yard to participate in the last segment of the 4 Academy Assembly, the 4 Academy Battle Royale. However, they didn't expect that the battle in the inner yard had not ended yet. What surprised them even more was that the dozens of people in the arena were actually suppressed by Jiang Chun and a few others. Moreover, every few breaths or 10 breaths of time, someone would be knocked off the stage. The one who blew the vertical bamboo flute is Jiang Chun, right? Jiang Lingxiao was defeated by him. A youth holding a bronze compass asked the person beside him. This person was a disciple of the heavenly yard, Lan Xuanji. He was good at deduction, setting up arrays, and was proficient in the 5 elements and 8 trigrams. He was known as the most difficult person to deal with in the heavenly yard. That's him. Beside Lan Xuanji, a youth in a red robe nodded and said, but looking at him, he doesn't seem to be in a good condition. Yes, I can see that. Lan Xuanji nodded and chuckled. It has nothing to do with us. We just need to get into the top 4. We can't be careless. I heard that there are a few powerful geniuses in this year's Earthyard. Their strength might not be weaker than ours. The red-robed youth frowned and said, also look at the battle in the inner yard. Jiang Chun and his group have already gained the upper hand. They might even have won this battle long ago. Oh, yes. Then why are they still fighting? Lan Xuanji frowned. Suddenly, a cold light flashed in his eyes, and he said, is he stalling for time? Dong! At this moment, the bell in the inner yard rang. The sound of the bell signified that the chaotic battle in the inner court had come to an end, and the battle had come to an end. Anyone who remained on the stage would be considered to have advanced to the next round. It's over so soon? Jiang Chun frowned. After the group of people who specialized in mental energy had been knocked out of the arena, Jiang Chun and his group had gained the upper hand. As long as he wanted to, he could end the battle at any time. However, he had been stalling for time. Who would have thought that the time for the battle would come before they knew it? One is playing the zither, one is blowing the vertical bamboo flute, one is dancing, one is sneaking an attack, and one is fighting head-on. What a bunch of geniuses. Monsters. Fight my ass. There are so many of us. But this is all that's left? At this moment, the people who were still standing in the arena had strange expressions on their faces. Nearly 70 people had teamed up, and there was no lack of upper-level honorable martial artists. In the end, they had been beaten up by Jiang Chun and his group, and there were less than 15 people who were still standing in the arena. Moreover, they could sense that if Jiang Chun had not been stalling for time, they would have been knocked out of the arena long ago. Rest for half an hour. After that, we'll begin the battle royale, Wu Xin said. As soon as he said that, the eyes of those who had advanced lit up. The most crucial battle of the 4-yard tournament was about to begin. In this battle, as long as one was strong enough, one could enter the top 4 and enter the Heaven and Earth Pavilion. That was the holy land of cultivation in the eyes of many. Many people wanted to enter the Heaven and Earth Pavilion at all costs. However, the Heaven and Earth Pavilion had a limited number of places, and ordinary people could not enter. The outer yard, inner yard, Earth Pavilion, and Sky Pavilion will have a battle royale. Actually, there's nothing to see. After all, the disciples of the outer yard, inner yard, and Earth Pavilion are no match for the disciples of the Heaven Pavilion. Someone pursed his lips. This last battle is not fair at all. Chapter 2:25. The 4 Academy Conference had a total of 3 rounds. The first 2 matches were between their respective courtyards. Regardless of whether it was a one-on-one battle or a battle royale, the disciples of the other courtyards would not interfere. However, the third match was different. In the third round, the disciples of the 4 courtyards who had advanced to the next round would fight in the same dojo. In the end, the last 4 people would be sent to the Heaven and Earth Pavilion. This kind of competition was unfair to many people. After all, It was common knowledge that the disciples of the heavenly court were the strongest in the four-direction divine institute. In many people's eyes, they didn't even need to watch the third round. The disciples of the heavenly court would definitely get into the top four. However, no one complained. At most, they expressed a trace of dissatisfaction. In this world where the strong are respected, how can there be fairness? Yeah, that's right. As long as one is strong enough, what's the point of fairness? Many people chuckled. They could only blame themselves for not being strong enough. However, this year's Four Academy Conference was a little different. Putting aside the fact that Jiang Chun and his group were in the inner yard, there was a surprisingly strong disciple in the outer yard, Lu Zhong. This person had entered the Four-Way Divine Institute as an exception. Since he hadn't entered the institute for a long time, he hadn't passed many tests, so he stayed in the outer court. However, his cultivation had reached the upper level of the honorable realm. Moreover, he was an expert who practiced both martial arts and martial arts. At the same time, there were also a few very strong prodigies in the Earth Court. For example, the number 1 ranked Xian Shanhe, number 2 Mu Ziqiao, and number 9 Gu Xiaojun. These three people had dominated all their opponents in the Earth Court competition. Even those ranked 3rd to 8th had been defeated by them. As a result, this year's Four Academy Conference seemed to be a little confusing. In the past, before the final round of the Four Academy tournament had even begun, the outcome had already been decided. But this year, it seemed a little uncertain. "Boss, how are you?" At this moment, Jiang Chun was sitting cross-legged at the edge of the dojo. His face was pale and bloodless. His body was trembling slightly, and the veins on his forehead were bulging. He seemed to be in great pain. The power of the backlash hasn't disappeared yet, and he's already forcefully using his power. "Do you think he'll be fine now?" Nian Chang'e curled her lips. As she spoke, she spat out a mouthful of blood. It was obvious that Nian Chang'e's Taoist soul had been damaged in the previous battle. Now he was in a bad state. "It doesn't matter. We just have to wait until the backlash dissipates," Jiang Chen whispered. He sensed the state of his body and frowned. "I still need the time it takes for an incense stick to burn." As soon as these words came out, the expressions of Jianglu and the others suddenly turned ugly. After resting for half an incense stick's worth of time, when the third battle began, there was still half an incense stick's worth of time left. What should he do in the last half an incense stick of time? After the previous battle, Jiang Chen's group, with the exception of Mo Xingtian, who was in a slightly better state, the others were all heavily injured. Needless to say, Nian Chang'e's Dao soul was damaged, and his battle prowess plummeted. Zhang Lu had burned his blood essence, and now his qi and blood were in a deficit, so his battle strength was no longer at its peak. As for Hua Liani and Nayland Mayer, they had used up all of their spiritual energy. It was impossible for them to recover in the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. If that was the case, how was he going to survive the last 15 minutes? Hua Liani, Nayland Mayer, you two don't have to participate later, Jiang Chen said, and Zhang Lu, you burned your blood essence, so you don't have to participate. Boss, then you, Mo Xingtian, and Nian Chang'e will participate? Zhang Lu stared and said, "No, it's too dangerous. I want to participate. I can still summon a war spirit." Hua Liani said coldly, "What? You don't believe me? I want to participate too. I can dance again." Nayland Mayer blinked her beautiful eyes and said sweetly, "Master, I want to..." Hearing this, Jiang Chun was stunned for a moment. His face darkened, and he said, "All of you listen to me." Seeing that Jiang Chun was relaxed, Zhang Lu and the others immediately calmed down. On the side, Nian Chang'e licked her face, pointed at herself, and said, "Can I not participate?" "What do you think?" Jiang Chun said snappily. "Are you really going to let me fight this battle alone?" "Why? The three of them don't have to participate, so why should I? I'm also injured, and my Dao soul is damaged. I don't care. I don't want to participate," Nian Chang'e shouted. Bang! However, just as she finished speaking, Jiang Chen punched Nian Chang'e's forehead. This time, Nian Chang'e became obedient. She nodded with an aggrieved face and muttered weakly, "Okay, I'll participate." "Master, what about me?" Mo Xingtian asked. Among the group, Mo Xingtian was in the best state. In the previous battle, he had been hiding in the dark and did not suffer any attacks. You don't have to participate. Go outside the quadrangle divine courtyard and watch, Jiang Chen said in a deep voice. Now, the martial pavilion and the Jiang family probably know that I will be expelled from the quadrangle divine courtyard after the quadrangle conference. Go outside and watch. See how many people from the Jiang family and the martial pavilion are here. Okay. Mo Xingtian nodded immediately. His figure dimmed, and he left quietly like a ghost. After that, Jiang Chun did not say anything. Instead, he raised his head and looked at the sky. There seemed to be a trace of helplessness and melancholy in his deep eyes. Are you all doing well in the nine heavens? Jiang Chun sighed. I hope you're all doing well. It's a pity that I'm not doing well at all. To be honest, Jiang Chun did not have the slightest confidence in this final battle. To hold out for half an hour against so many monstrous geniuses was a kind of torture for him. Even if he could hold out for half an hour, he had to fight against those monstrous geniuses. Not to mention the heavenly court. Just the earth court alone was enough to give Jiang Chen a headache. After all, this was the quadrangle conference. Anyone who could advance to the third round of the competition was stronger than Jiang Lingxiao. Therefore, even if he could hold out for half an hour, what awaited Jiang Chun was a tough battle. Time's up. The third round of the quadrangle conference begins. All disciples, please enter the venue. Half an hour passed quickly. Wu Xian's voice was heard, and the disciples who had advanced to the next round of the competition entered the dojo one after another. Why are there so few people? At this moment, Jiang Chen entered the dojo with the help of Nian Chang'e. However, Jiang Chun was very confused because there were only 13 people in the entire dojo, including him and Nian Chang'e. Other than Lu Chong, the rest of the outer court disciples who advanced to the next round have all forfeited. Nian Chang'e had already asked around and said, there are 3 disciples from the earth court, Xian Shanhe, Mu Ziqiao, and Ge Xiaojun. The rest are disciples from the heavenly court. We have to pay attention to the 2 disciples from the heavenly court. One of them is Lan Xuanji, who has a compass. He is proficient in divination, occult arts, and mental strength. There is also the red-robed guy beside Lan Xuanji. His name is unknown, but he is called the Fire God. Hearing this, Jiang Chen could not help but squint his eyes. He glanced at those people and said with a wry smile, all right, I'll count on you later. Chapter 226. What's wrong? Nian Chang'e was confused. He didn't understand what Jiang Chen meant. But soon, Nian Chang'e understood. Except for Jiang Chen and Nian Chang'e, the other 9 people were all looking at them. F***CK. Why do they hate you so much? Nian Chang'e was confused and asked, are they targeting you? No, some are targeting me, and some are targeting you, Jiang Chen said. Lu Chong from the outer court and the 3 from the earth court are all hostile to you. As for those from the heavenly court, they're probably humiliated because of what happened to Jiang Lingxiao, so they want to defeat me in the competition to redeem their reputation, Jiang Chen said. F***CK. Then, can I admit defeat? Nian Chang'e muttered, it's understandable that Lu Chong is targeting me. After all, he's the successor of the Tongyu Temple. He's our sworn enemy. But who the hell are those 3 from the earth court? Did I ever offend them? I don't know. Jiang Chen smiled bitterly and took a few steps back. He patted Nian Chang'e's shoulder and said, it's up to you now. Nian Chang'e was speechless and rolled his eyes. However, something unexpected happened. The 13 people stood in the training hall, and no one made a move. They were in a stalemate. After 30 breaths, Lu Chong from the outer court suddenly pointed at Nian Chang'e and said, I don't want to be in the top 4. My target is him. Just don't interfere in my battle with him later. Okay, no problem. The others immediately nodded. It was naturally best to have 2 fewer opponents. However, the 3 from the earth court disagreed, because their target was also Nian Chang'e. Why? Nian Chang'e must be defeated by an earth court disciple. Lu Chong, you're just an outer court disciple. Don't be so arrogant. Xian Shanhe, Mu Ziqiao, and Ge Xiaojuan's expressions were cold, Anger flashed across their eyes. After all, there was still the inner courtyard between the outer courtyard and the earth courtyard. In their eyes, Lu Zhong was just an outer court disciple. What right did he have to stand here and fight with them? What right did he have to talk to them? Earth court? Is he very strong? Lu Zhong squinted. His normal pupils suddenly turned into two vertical lines. Wang! The moment he finished speaking, he rushed out. His body was like a bolt of lightning, and black spiritual energy rolled up like a raging tide. So strong. This is upper level of the exalted realm. Especially when they saw Lu Chang's pupils. It was as if they had seen the eyes of the Grim Reaper. However, as the three strongest disciples of the Earth Court, how could they be afraid of Lu Zhong, an outer court disciple? Boom! In the next moment, the three of them attacked at the same time, trying to defeat Lu Chong. What the hell? He actually activated the Tier 2 Reaper's Eye. Nian Chang'e exclaimed. She held her forehead and looked at Jiang Chen helplessly. I can't defeat him. Jiang Chen was dumbfounded. We haven't even fought, and you're saying you can't defeat him? The strongest martial skill of Tongyu Temple, the Reaper's Eye, Nian Chang'e explained. The Reaper's Eye has a total of 9 stages. After activating the second stage, his strength is equivalent to the intermediate Earth realm, and I cough. Nian Chang'e coughed and said awkwardly, I haven't cultivated the heavenly eye of Tongyu Temple yet. Jiang Chen was dumbfounded again. He rolled his eyes and asked, the heavenly eye is the strongest martial skill of Tongyu Temple? That's right. Nian Chang'e said proudly. The heavenly eye can see the heavens above and the underworld below. It can see life and death, and it can see the past and the present. Hearing this, Jiang Chen's face flushed red. His chest puffed up and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Jiang Chen glared at Nian Chang'e angrily. After holding it in for a long time, he scolded, What the hell? You don't want to cultivate the strongest martial skill? Do you eat sh*t every day? I don't have time. Nian Chang'e touched her nose and looked up at the sky. She was obviously guilty. After all, Nian Chang'e never cared about cultivation. To her, cultivation was up to fate. Cultivation with Buddha's nature, boom. At this moment, Lu Chong and Xian Shanhe were fighting fiercely. No, to be more precise, it was a one-sided battle. Lu Chong was alone. His body was covered in black spiritual energy. He held a dark green giant scythe in his hand. With a sweep, Gu Xiaojun was almost cut in half. If Wu Xian had not acted in time and fished him out of the dojo, Gu Xiaojun would have died. As for Xian Shanhe and Mu Ziqiao, they were sweating profusely and looked terrible. Facing the Reaper's attack, the two of them couldn't even resist. They could only defend. In the end, a black light shot out from Lu Chong's eyes and pierced their foreheads. Buzz! The sky and earth spun as if the world was collapsing. It was as if their souls were being crushed. Xian Shanhe and Mu Ziqiao were dumbfounded. They stood on the spot as if their souls had been taken away. Just as the dark green giant scythe was about to hit them, Wu Xian took action again and brought Xian Shanhe and Mu Ziqiao out of the training hall. Just like that, the three from the Earth Court were defeated. F***CK? Is this guy really an outer court disciple? Are you kidding me? The three strongest from the Earth Court can't even defeat Lu Chong. What is that? He's like a god of death. It's too scary. Especially those eyes. They're as deep as the abyss. You can't see the bottom. If you look at them a few more times, even your soul will be sucked in. Gasps could be heard all around. Some of them even closed their eyes, not daring to look at Lu Chong, especially his pupils, which had turned into two vertical lines. It was too creepy and too scary. Do you see that? That's the eyes of the god of death. It can strip the opponent's soul and body in an instant, turning them into a walking corpse. Nian Chang'e smiled bitterly. Against Lu Chong, I can't defeat him even if I use all my strength. Really? Jiang Chen glanced at Nian Chang'e. Of course, he didn't believe it. After all, he had known Nian Chang'e for so long, but he had never seen him use all his strength. Sometimes Jiang Chun even had an illusion that if Nian Chang'e used all his strength, he would be stronger than him. Nian Chang'e, come here. After taking care of Xin Shanhe and the other two, Lu Chong pointed the dark green giant scythe at Nian Chang'e. His intention was clear. In this third battle, he would fight no one but Nian Chang'e. This was the enmity between the Heavenspan Temple and the Seclusion Temple. I admit defeat, Nian Chang'e said immediately. He looked at Jiang Chun awkwardly and smiled bitterly. I really can't defeat him. I really can't help you this time. Yeah. Jiang Chun curled up the corners of his mouth slightly. He kicked Nian Chang'e's butt. Chapter 227. Caught off guard, Nian Chang'e staggered a few steps forward. In Lu Chang's eyes, Nian Chang'e was ready to fight. Good. Nian Chang'e, fight! Lu Chong shouted. Black spiritual energy exploded from his body, as if he was the god of death. Within a few breaths, he rushed to the front of Nian Chang'e, and in his eyes, a black light burst out. I admit defeat. Dean Wuxian, I admit defeat. Nian Chang'e shouted wildly. With his eyes closed, he kept moving to the side. However, Wuxian acted as if he didn't hear anything and didn't announce that Nian Chang'e had admitted defeat. Moreover, when the third battle began, the arrays and restrictions were set up inside and outside the dojo, unless one was defeated or was taken out of the dojo by Wuxian after admitting defeat. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to leave the dojo. As the successor of the Heavenly Temple, how can you be so cowardly? Do you dare to fight me face to face? Lu Chong was furious. He turned into a black shadow and chased after Nian Chang'e. Unfortunately, Nian Chang'e's speed was extremely fast. Like a flash of lightning, he ran wildly in the training hall. Stop right there! Lu Chong roared. Although he had cultivated the death gods to the second stage, and his cultivation was higher than Nian Chang'e's, he was much slower than Nian Chang'e. In this way, he couldn't catch up with him at all. Nian Chang'e, on the other hand, didn't care about it and just kept running. Has the style changed? I think so. The spectators were also dumbfounded and speechless. Previously, when Lu Chong fought with Xian Shanhe and the other two, he was so domineering. But now, Lu Chong couldn't even catch up with Nian Chang'e. It was like a child's play. One chased while the other ran. It seemed that the battle between Nian Chang'e and Lu Chong wouldn't end for a while. Then, what do the seven of you say? At this moment, Jiang Chun sat on the ground and looked at the 7 disciples of the heavenly court calmly. Although the 7 of them had no grudge against Jiang Chun, the heavenly court had been humiliated after Jiang Chun defeated the disciple of the heavenly court, Jiang Lingxiao. As such, the 7 of them naturally paid extra attention to Jiang Chun. Jiang Lingxiao is nothing in the heavenly court. A young man with a long sword in his hand raised his head proudly and said, defeating Jiang Lingxiao doesn't mean you can defeat us. That's right. Jiang Lingxiao can't represent the strength of the disciples of the heavenly court. Another topless young man nodded, his eyes flashing with a scarlet light. So, the few of you are considered to be the strongest disciples of the heavenly court? Jiang Chun raised his brows and asked. So, in this battle, are you going to fight me with the 7 of you to regain the dignity of the heavenly court? Do the 7 of us need to work together to deal with you? Fire God said disdainfully. Just one of my flames is not something you can withstand. When Jiang Chun heard this, he chuckled and stood up slowly. He shrugged his shoulders and said, all right, then send someone to fight me. After all, I'm not in a good condition now. I'm like a cripple. If you fight me now, you will definitely win. Hearing this, Lan Xuanji, Fire God, and the others' expressions turned ugly. This battle was indeed very important to them. Not only did they have to fight for the top 4, but they also had to defeat Jiang Chun and regain the dignity of the heavenly court. In their hearts, the top 4 would definitely be among the 7 of them. Therefore, they could take their time to fight for the top 4 spots. Regaining the dignity of the heavenly court was their priority. However, if the 7 of them were to team up against Jiang Chun in front of so many people, even if they won, the heavenly court's dignity would be gone. Moreover, Jiang Chen had already said that he was not in a good condition and was like a cripple. Under such circumstances, even if they defeated Jiang Chen in a one-on-one battle, the heavenly court's dignity would still be gone. What do you want? Lan Xuanji frowned and said, You're definitely no match for us. Why don't you admit defeat? Why should I admit defeat? Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows and said, Give me half an hour, and I'll fight all 7 of you. What do you think? What? Is this guy out of his mind? Half an hour? What can half an hour change? Those are the 7 strongest people in the heavenly court. Arrogant and ignorant. Does he think that he can compete with the 7 strongest people in the heavenly court just because he defeated Zhang Lingxiao? What a joke! Mocking and disdainful voices could be heard all around. No one believed Jiang Chen's words. What kind of joke was this? Did he really think that being a disciple of the heavenly court was child's play? Lan Xuanji and the others were also furious. Jiang Chen's words were too arrogant. What did he think of the heavenly court? What did he think of the 7 of them? However, Jiang Chen had spoken so bluntly. What else could they say? Other than waiting for half an hour, what else could they do? Okay, we'll wait for half an hour. After half an hour, I can defeat you alone. The young man with the long sword raised his eyebrows and said, By then, I hope you can withstand 3 moves from my sword. Okay, then I'll see you in an hour. Jiang Chen said with a smile. He was laughing in his heart. Youngsters are youngsters. They are so easy to fool. Jiang Chen thought to himself. Bang! At this moment, a muffled sound came from the other side of the training ground. Immediately, Nian Chang'e was covered in blood. Like a kite with a broken string, he flew backward and landed heavily on the ground. Ah! I'm injured. Ah! I admit defeat. I can't defeat you. Lu Chong, you're so powerful. The next moment, Nian Chang'e was lying on the ground with his face up. His voice was extremely miserable. However, Lu Chong stood there with his sickle in his hand and his eyes wide open. I didn't hit you at all. After a while, Lu Chong shouted angrily, Can you be more King serious? Are you pretending to be seriously injured? Am I not good at pretending? Nian Chang'e blinked his eyes and stood up slowly. His expression suddenly became dignified, and he said seriously, I know why you insist on fighting with me, but I can tell you clearly that I won't agree to the marriage between your sister and me. Upon hearing this, everyone's eyes widened as if they had discovered a new continent. Lu Chong's face was red. He stared at Nian Chang'e with the death god's eye and said in a low voice, This is a marriage between the heavenly temple and the secluded temple in order to resolve their grudges. How dare you refuse? If you refuse, I'll beat you until you agree. I refuse. Nian Chang'e shook her head and took out the booklet in front of Lu Chong. After a few glances, she couldn't help but stroke her hair and said, A man like me, who is like the wind, can't be controlled by your sister. I'm a man that your sister can't get. However, before Nian Chang'e could finish his sentence, his body trembled. His body stiffened, and he turned around with difficulty to look at a corner outside the training ground. Chapter 2:28. In the corner, there was a woman in a long black dress. She was beautiful and had a graceful figure. Her black pupils had turned into 6 vertical lines. This was the symbol of the stage 6 death god's eye. This woman was Lu Chong's sister, Lu Ruo. Do you really not agree? At this moment, Lu Yin spoke softly and slowly walked to the edge of the dojo. Boom! Shortly after, a loud explosion rang out. The formation and barrier that was as stable as a fortress crumbled under Lu Ruo's slender, jade-like hand. What the *CK? Jiang Chen blinked. Like everyone else, he couldn't figure out what was going on. Lu Ruo and Lu Chong entered the 4 cardinal divine halls to force a marriage. Lu Ruo's appearance caused a slight change in the 4 Academy conference. At least, Lu Ruo's strength was enough to affect the normal progress of the 4 Academy conference. One must know that the barrier and array around the dojo couldn't be broken by ordinary people. Even Jiang Chen couldn't shatter it, However, Lu Ruo only raised her hand lightly, and the array and barrier shattered. To be honest, even Wu Xian was afraid of this. My old man said that you have to agree to this marriage even if you don't want to. At this moment, Lu Ruo walked to Nian Chang'e. She raised her eyebrows and said coldly, "If you don't agree, I don't mind using force." Nian Chang'e was dumbfounded. His eyes flashed with fear. The Skyspan Temple and the Secluded Temple had been enemies since ancient times. In this generation, the people of the two temples wanted to use marriage to ease the relationship between the two temples. Therefore, both sides knew each other very well and had investigated each other's backgrounds. Naturally, Nian Chang'e had also investigated Lu Ruo's background. The result made Nian Chang'e very sad. Nian Chang'e had estimated that even 10 of him wouldn't be able to defeat one of Lu Ruo. My master said that a real man can be killed, but not humiliated. Nian Chang'e's eyes narrowed. Although he looked tall and straight, his legs were trembling. What kind of joke was this? Lu Ruo had opened the sixth-stage eye of the death god, and his cultivation was above his. How could Nian Chang'e not be afraid? They were only trying to be brave now, because they had more people on their side. If it was a place with fewer people, this be***starred would probably kneel down and beg for mercy. After all, Nian Chang'e had never been manly. "Marry first, then kill you," Lu Yin said softly. "Is that what you mean?" No. Listen to me." At this moment, Nian Chang'e was anxious. He knew very well what kind of person Lu Ruo was. This fellow was very indifferent. He didn't know how to beat around the bush. Whatever he said was what it was. So, if Nian Chang'e didn't agree now, it would be the anniversary of her death after they got married. "Let's go back to the secluded divine palace and get married first," Lu Yin said softly. Her slender hand held Nian Chang'e's hand as they walked out of the arena. Of course, Nian Chang'e wanted to resist, and even the 36 lotuses appeared. However, even if he used all his strength, he couldn't shake off Lu Ruo's seemingly weak hand. "That, brother, you take care of yourself. I can't even protect myself now, so I'll take my leave first." When passing by Jiang Chun, Nian Chang'e smiled bitterly, his face as dark as ink. "You, take care." Jiang Chun patted Nian Chang'e's shoulder with a sympathetic face and sighed, "I understand your sadness." Then, under the gaze of everyone, Nian Chang'e was taken away just like that. Wu Xian stood at the side and didn't speak from beginning to end. It was because he knew very well that whether it was Nian Chang'e, Lu Ruo, or even Lu Zhong, these three people were not people that the Sifang Divine Palace could afford to provoke. At least in the situation where the dean was seriously injured, these three people couldn't be provoked. Whatever they wanted to do, they could do it. After all, the foundation of the secluded divine palace and the secluded divine palace was too terrifying. Probably even the martial pavilion was not willing to provoke them. The competition continues. After Nian Chang'e and Lu Ruo left the training ground, Wu Xian spoke, and the competition continued. Lu Zhong didn't leave. Instead, he stood on the training ground with an arrogant look on his face. The giant sickle in his hand was pointed at the group of heavenly court disciples from afar. "I've achieved my goal of coming to the Sifang Divine Palace this time. Next, it's time to face you so-called prodigies." Lu Zhong said arrogantly, "I'm neither a prodigy nor a monster. I'll watch from the side first." Jiang Qin smiled. He didn't care about his reputation as he walked silently to the edge of the training ground and sat down with his legs crossed. As for the few people from the heavenly court, they were furious. So what if an outer court disciple was the successor of the secluded divine palace? How dare he challenge so many of them? Did he want to die? Moreover, if they lost, where would the heavenly court put their face? Where would the Sifang divine palace put their face? "Fire God, and I won't fight. I'll leave this arrogant kid to the five of you," Lan Xuanji said softly. "If the five of you fight together, you might be able to fight him." As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd was startled. Everyone knew that Lan Xuanji was proficient in the 9 palaces, 8 trigrams, and the art of divination. It was obvious that he knew something, What he said just now was clearly telling everyone that Lu Zhong alone was enough to fight against the other 5 disciples of the heavenly court. The other 5 disciples of the heavenly court naturally believed Lan Xuanji's words without a doubt. At that instant, the 5 cultivators wore stern looks on their faces. Not bad, little Lan. I don't need to say more about your and fire god strength. I admit that I'm not your opponent. Lu Zhong was not pretentious and said bluntly, after all, your cultivation is so much higher than mine. It's good that you know, Lan Xuanji said with a nod. Fire god also smiled calmly and said, even if our cultivation bases are the same, it's hard to tell who's stronger between us. That's not necessarily true, Lu Zhong said softly and suddenly dashed out. Watch out! Watch out for his death god's eye. Instantly, Lan Xuanji and Fire God warned everyone. However, there was still one person who was directly hit by the death god's eye. The abyss-like black light penetrated deep into his soul and separated his physical body from his soul. Like a walking corpse, this person stood still and did not move an inch. Even when the giant sickle landed in front of his face, he did not react at all. Of course, Lu Zhong did not slash down. He only said contemptuously, "One? Who do you think you are? Invincible. Wind wall. Omnidirectional wind wall." At this moment, the other 4 people all made their moves. 6 walls formed by the wind, trapping Lu Zhong like a cage. Following that, the wind blades engulfed Lu Zhong like a tornado. Wild dance. Under the wild winds, the black light in Lu Zhong's eyes surged, and the sickle in his hand danced wildly. Like a demon dancing wildly, the black blade exploded and dispersed the wind blades in just a few breaths' time. Immediately after, the sickle slashed the 6 wind walls. Taking a step forward, the black light in his eyes surged. Chapter 229. I'll end all of you in one move, Lu Zhong said seriously, and the black light in his eyes grew stronger. Within 3 breaths of time, a huge black abyss appeared in the sky above the dojo. The abyss was silent and bottomless. However, it was filled with a terrifying, pulling force. Within a few breaths of time, 3 people were pulled into the abyss, and blood dripped down. "And you, let's go in together." Black breath. Along with Lu Zhong's roar, a sound similar to a heartbeat came from the abyss. Then, the opening of the abyss was like a huge mouth. As it opened and closed, the pulling force became even more terrifying. Finally, the last person was pulled into the abyss. Boom! After a few explosions, the abyss finally collapsed. Then, a few disciples of the heavenly court fell from the sky and fainted after landing on the ground. Really? One person defeated 5 from the heavenly court. This guy is so fierce. Exclamations could be heard all around. Most of the people did not expect Lu Zhong's strength to be so strong. Even Jiang Chun was struck dumb. He exclaimed to himself how strong Lu Zhong was. At the same time, Jiang Chun realized something. He knew that Nian Chang'e could definitely defeat Lu Zhong, but she was just pretending to be weak. If Lu Zhong was so powerful, how powerful was Nian Chang'e? There's always someone better than you. It seems like I have another competitor in this life, Jiang Chun said softly with a smile. Then I won't be lonely in this life. At this moment, Lu Zhong stood on the spot, his eyes shining with unwillingness. This was because although he won, it was very difficult for him to defeat the 5 geniuses of the heavenly court. At this moment, his spiritual energy was almost exhausted, and he could not even use the death god's eye again. He wanted to continue fighting. He wanted to fight Lan Xuanji and Huoshun. He wanted to fight Jiang Chun even more. Unfortunately, the current him was powerless to continue fighting. That's enough. I'll come again next time, Lu Zhong said softly after resting for a while, then turned and left the dojo. At this moment, only Lan Xuanji, Huoshun, and Jiang Chun were left in the dojo. Can I admit defeat? Jiang Chun asked with a smile. After all, those who entered the top 4 in the 4 Academy meeting would be able to enter the Heaven and Earth Pavilion. Now, there were only 3 people left. Even if he admitted defeat, he could still enter the Heaven and Earth Pavilion. The 2 of us have been waiting for you, and now you're admitting defeat. The fire god narrowed his eyes. Are you looking down on us? We've been waiting for so long. Shouldn't we at least fight? Lan Xuanji said softly, calculating the time. An hour has already passed, right? Jiangchen couldn't help but nod. He said, yeah, exactly 1 hour. Wang. The moment his voice fell, an incomparably violent aura erupted from Jiang Chen's body. The power of heaven and earth circled around his body like a 5-clawed golden dragon. When his eyes opened and closed, there seemed to be starlight swirling in them. In his pupils, the sun and moon were floating. An hour had passed, and the backlash had disappeared. Jiang Chen had already recovered to his peak state. If you really want to fight, then the 2 of you come at me together, Jiang Chen said softly. This should be my last battle in the Quadrangle Divine Institute. I also want to leave my name. Ha! How arrogant. The fire god raised his eyebrows and said, if Lan Xuanji and I join forces, none of the disciples in the Quadrangle Divine Institute will dare to make a sound. Although I can't calculate your strength, but I should be able to take you down, Lan Xuanji said. His tone was not as confident as the fire god. This was because he had already calculated Jiang Chen's strength and foundation. In the end, all he saw was a blank, and in that unknown emptiness, Lan Xuanji saw something else. That was the flames of war and blood. Lan Xuanji really could not calculate how strong Jiang Chen was. However, he had a feeling that under Jiang Chen's unruly appearance, there was a ball of fire hidden. There was an indescribable terror hidden in it. It was like an untouchable abyss that could not be seen clearly and could not be seen clearly. However, at this point, if he did not fight, it would not be a simple sentence. Billow Academy's inner court dean, Lan Sui, has arrived. At this moment, a man walked over from afar. He was the leader of the Billow Academy during the Crimson Banquet, the inner court dean, Lan Sui. His appearance caused the atmosphere of the scene to become somewhat oppressive and strange. Everyone knew that the relationship between the top 10 academies was not very harmonious, especially the top 3 academies. Apart from the Heaven and Earth Pavilion, the other 2 academies had always wanted to annex the other academies. Now, the 4 Academy Conference was at its most critical moment. What was the point of Lan Sui's dojo? I've been bored recently. I heard that the Quadrangle Divine Institute is holding the 4 Academy Conference, so I came to take a look. Dean Wu Xian, you don't mind, right? Lan Sui smiled and walked to Wu Xian's side. If you're just here to take a look, I naturally don't mind, Wu Xian said softly. When he looked at Lan Sui, his eyes flickered with fear and vigilance. Yes, that's right. Lan Sui nodded, and his gaze fell on Jiang Chen. At this moment, Wu Xian immediately understood that Lan Sui was here for only one purpose, Jiang Chen. However, Wu Xian did not know why Lan Sui cared so much about Jiang Chen. I heard that the Martial Pavilion and Jiang clan have been targeting this lad. The Quadrangle Divine Institute doesn't seem to be able to protect him, right? Lan Sui asked. What does that have to do with you? Wu Xian said coldly with an unfriendly expression. After all, as an institute, it was somewhat embarrassing for them to be unable to protect their own disciples. Now that Lan Sui had stabbed them in the heart, no one would be nice to him. My Billow Academy can protect him. Lan Sui's expression suddenly became serious. He looked at Jiang Chen and said loudly, If you come to my Billow Academy will protect your life. Jiang Chen, who had just prepared to fight, was stunned when he suddenly heard this. Then Jiang Chen shook his head and said, It's just an institute that's ranked second. How can it be compared to the Heaven and Earth Pavilion? Why don't I go to the Heaven and Earth Pavilion and go to your Billow Academy instead? Lan Sui was speechless immediately. After all, compared to the Heaven and Earth Pavilion, the Billow Academy was indeed slightly inferior. However, it was hard to say how much they were inferior. After all, the difference between the second and the first would not be huge. All right, you can decide for yourself. I'm just here to join in the fun, Lan Sui said with a laugh, and then went silent. Come on, let's fight. At this moment, Jiangchen looked at Lan Xuanji and the fire god and waved at them. His expression was indifferent, and his posture was awe-inspiring. However, his eyes flickered with battle intent. This was because this was his last battle in the Quadrangle Divine Institute. The two people in front of him were the two strongest disciples in the Quadrangle Divine Institute. Chapter 230. Ever since Jiang Chun entered the four cardinal divine halls, the inner court had been in turmoil and had never been peaceful. It had even attracted the attention of a few hall masters of the martial pavilion. To the people of the four cardinal divine halls, Jiang Chen's name was absolutely resounding. As for his strength, it was even more frightening. Everyone had thought that Jiang Chun would not be able to enter the top four in this four academy competition. After all, there were too many people targeting him. But who would have thought that although Jiang Chun did not make a move, the people around him were each more ferocious than the other. Now, they had forcefully entered the top three, and those disciples of the heavenly court had let Jiang Chun pass the last hour for the sake of their pride. Now, Jiang Chun was at his peak. At this moment, everyone wanted to see how strong Jiang Chun was at his peak. Could he fight against two and defeat the two strongest geniuses of the heavenly court? Four cardinal divine halls? At this moment, Lan Xuanji took the lead. The compass in his hand rose into the sky, and four light doors descended. The light doors appeared and filled the air with divine light. It was like a barrier that trapped Jiang Chun in an area. Then, the fire god took action. With a wave of his hand, the sky was filled with raging flames that were like an upside-down sea of fire that surged down. In an instant, everyone could only see the raging flames in the sky, but they could not see Jiang Chen's figure. Lan Xuanji and the fire god. Either one of them is a genius or a monster. Once the two of them join forces, there are very few people in the same generation who can defeat them. One controls the field, the other attacks. When the two of them work together, ordinary people can't stop them at all. Everyone exclaimed, and some were secretly delighted. They hoped that Jiang Chun would be defeated. After all, ever since Jiang Chun entered the four cardinal divine halls, he had not lost a single battle. If that's all you have, then I don't need to use my full strength. Suddenly, the raging flames that enveloped Jiang Chen's body disappeared. A long, illusory dragon formed by the power of heaven and earth roared out. Then, Jiang Chen pushed out both hands. The power of heaven and earth was like a river bursting through a dam, shattering the four light walls. Then, the light of the sun and moon appeared in his eyes. The solar and lunar eclipses erupted at the same time. A ray of moonlight fell on Lan Xuanji's body, intimidating his mind power. Another beam of sunlight blasted Vulcan's body, forcing him to retreat more than 10 meters. However, Lan Xuanji and the fire god were powerful. Although they were hit, they were not seriously injured. At the same time, Jiang Chen's words angered them even more. Flame Dragon Roar. The fire god roared and formed a series of hand seals. Raging flames condensed and transformed into the phantom of a true dragon. Following the roar of a dragon, the flames were unleashed, causing the temperature of the dojo to rise rapidly. Meanwhile, Lan Xuanji pinched his fingers, causing runes to descend from the compass in the air. The runes spun, condensed, and scattered. In the end, they formed the 8 trigrams. Seal! As he shouted in a low voice, the 8 trigrams collapsed. Like thousands of chains, they imprisoned Jiang Chun. At this moment, Jiang Chun narrowed his eyes and felt the power of the 8 trigrams. He quickly summoned the Emperor's Vine, 1,000 trees and 1,000 hands. The Emperor's Vine exploded and extended its vines. Like arms, they struck forward. Boom! Amidst the explosion, the vines exploded, burned, and collapsed. At the same time, the fire dragon dissipated and turned into flames before finally extinguishing. However, the power of the 8 trigrams still remained on Jiangchun. Earth Dragon, soaring flames. At this moment, the fire god pressed his hands against the ground. Instantly, the ground beneath Jiangchun's feet cracked, and flames burst out like a volcanic eruption. This time, Jiangchun could not dodge and was struck by the flames. Like a kite with a broken string, he flew backward. However, Jiangchun's physical body was extremely strong, and he was protected by the power of heaven and earth. After flying backward, Jiangchun stomped his feet on the ground and arched his back. At the same time, the power of heaven and earth exploded completely. Like several true dragons, they roared out of his body and shook off the power of the 8 trigrams. However, before Jiangchun could do anything, runes fell from the compass again. This time, the runes gathered and turned into the power of the 9 palaces. Like a gigantic maze, it trapped Jiangchun. "You're really annoying." Jiangchun was enraged as well, and his eyes burned with rage. Although Lan Xuanji's attack was not lethal, it was too difficult to deal with. The power of imprisonment came wave after wave, completely restricting Jiangchun's movements. "Annoying? There's more to come," Lan Xuanji chuckled. "You were so arrogant before. What are you now?" "What am I?" Jiangchun muttered softly as if he was asking himself. The corner of his lips curled up slightly, revealing a hint of arrogance. "I'm nothing. Among the millions of living beings, I'm just a drop in the ocean," Jiangchun said softly. "But to the two of you, I'm a god." Boom! The moment he finished speaking, Jiangchun waved his hands. There was nothing fancy about it. Fist radiance danced as he punched out one after another. The seemingly ordinary fist prince forcefully shook off the power of the 9 palaces. "Do you know how to break everything with one force?" Jiangchun said softly. He clasped his hands together and slashed at the compass in the air like a sharp sword. "How dare you?" Lan Xuanji was shocked. The compass was made with his blood essence and was connected to his soul. If the compass was damaged, Lan Xuanji would be severely injured. Fire God's robe. Knowing the importance of the compass to Lan Xuanji, Fire God spat out a mouthful of blood without hesitation. The flames and blood essence merged and turned into a gigantic battle robe that covered the compass. Boom! However, Jiangchun's attack was too terrifying. The power of heaven and earth was like a sword that cut the battle robe in half. The remaining wisp of the force of heaven and earth struck the compass. Clang! The compass began to vibrate vigorously in the air. Even Lan Xuanji's body began to tremble. Blood flowed out of his mouth and nose. "You're courting death." Lan Xuanji was really angry. The fact that the compass was damaged infuriated him. "Huh?" Jiangchun snorted. His body shook and the undying bird Tao spirit appeared. Shriek! With a long shriek, the undying bird flew up. As it flapped its wings, flames rose. Its beak was like a sharp sword. With a flash, it knocked the feng shui compass down. Poof! At this moment, Lan Xuanji's body trembled even more violently. Blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. The compass that he had used his life to nurture was damaged. It was as if his soul was injured. Lan Xuanji's aura was greatly weakened. However, those who knew Lan Xuanji did not think that he would be defeated. Tao spirit. At this moment, Lan Xuanji put away the compass. At the same time, he shouted and 6 mirrors appeared behind him. The mirror emitted a mysterious light, and it used the power of the 6 directions to trap Jiangchun. However, this time, Jiangchun's expression became extremely serious. "This isn't the flowing light mirror's doctrine soul." Jiangchun was startled. Staring at the 6 mirrors, he said in a deep voice, "It's the mirror of gravity." "Yes, so what? It's too late." Lan Xuanji shouted and pressed his hands down. Chapter 231. In an instant, Jiangchun's body began to tremble as he felt a terrifying gravitational force on his body. All the bones in his body were emitting thunderous sounds. There were even some parts of his bones that had begun to crack. Fire God's shadow. At the same time, the fire god summoned his Taoist soul. A huge flaming shadow shrouded the fire god's body. The monstrous flames seemed like they were going to burn this part of the world. In the next moment, the fire god charged out. He was good at spells, and with the support of the fire god's shadow's Taoist soul, he was now able to fight in close combat. In a few steps, the fire god reached Jiang Chen. His fists were burning with flames as he beat Jiang Chen up. Jiang Chen was helpless. He was fighting against the gravitational force and could not divert his attention to deal with the fire god. He could only take more than 10 punches. Fortunately, Jiang Chen's body was extremely strong. With the support of his sacred constitution, his recovery speed was amazing. When the punches landed on his body, it sounded like a huge bell being rung. The fire god's hands were numb. He felt as though his fists had hit a boulder. "Are you guys done playing?" At this moment, Jiang Chen shouted angrily. He was very angry. One was playing with confinement, and the other was playing with fire. "Do you think I'm playing house and playing with you?" Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Chen's body began to tremble. The power of heaven and earth erupted from his limbs and bones like a snake. He threw a punch and sent the fire god in front of him flying back. Following that, Jiang Chen formed a seal with his hands. His spiritual power exploded, and the emperor's vines grew wildly. It was like a towering ancient tree. Its vines pressed down like countless giant arms descending from the sky. 1,000 tree, 1,000 hands. 9 ras hands. 3,000 great flames. 9 words of battle. Flaming plunder. At this moment, Jiang Chen went berserk. In just 3 breaths, the entire dojo was filled with Jiang Chen's attacks. 9 portals rose from the ground and sent the fire god flying into the air. One by one, the giant arms came crashing down and pinned the god of fire to the ground, rendering him immobile. Then, Jiang Chen took a step forward. His aura was so majestic that it was like a prairie fire. He dashed in front of Lan Xuanji. He stretched out his arm, and his 5 fingers were like the claws of an eagle. He grabbed Lan Xuanji's neck directly. "In," said Jiang Chen in a soft voice. He gently let go of Lan Xuanji, turned around, looked at Wu Xian, and said, "You can announce the result now." However, Wu Xian and the crowd were all dumbfounded. For a moment, they were unable to utter a single word. Previously, they had been fighting fiercely. However, after Jiang Chen became enraged, he ended the battle in a matter of minutes. In a fit of rage, he suppressed them. My God, in the previous battle, was he playing with Lan Xuanji and Fire God? This one set of attacks, and it's over? The crowd was speechless. Initially, they thought it would be an exciting battle. Initially, they thought Jiang Chen would be defeated in the battle. However, the outcome left them speechless. The champion of the competition of the 4 academies, Jiang Chen. A few moments later, Wu Xian collected his thoughts and announced the result. Meanwhile, Lan Xuanji and Fire God wore wry smiles. They exchanged glances with one another. Their eyes were filled with helplessness and speechlessness. "If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have given you half an hour," Lan Xuanji said with a wry smile. "Now this is embarrassing." How ruthless," Fire God exclaimed. "Compared to you, what are we, the so-called geniuses, compared to you? You guys are not bad. At least you managed to make me angry." Jiang Chen comforted them. However, the comforting words left Lan Xuanji and Fire God in an awkward position. They had attacked with all their might, and it was 2 against 1. In the end, they only managed to make Jiang Chen angry. This was too hurtful. The competition of the 4 academies has ended. The top 4 are Jiang Chen, Fire God, Lan Xuanji, and Lu Chong. Wu Xian said, since Lu Chong withdrew, only 3 people will be sent to the Heaven and Earth Pavilion this time. Vice Pavilion Master Li Yuan of the Heaven and Earth Pavilion has arrived. At this moment, a bell rang and a loud voice sounded in the square divine courtyard. Then the crowd saw a middle-aged man in a gray Taoist robe standing on a cloud and landing beside Wu Xian. He did not say anything. Instead, he nodded at Wu Xian and waved his hand. His spirit energy turned into a gentle wind and clouds that swept up Jiang Chun and the other two to bring them away. Vice Pavilion Master Li Yuan wait. However, at this moment, Lan Sui hurriedly said with a smile, the Heaven and Earth Pavilion has been taking away the strongest geniuses. It's embarrassing for our academies. What do you think? Li Yuan asked expressionlessly. Can you send one to the Billowing Wave Academy? Lan Sui asked tentatively. For example, him? As he spoke, Lan Sui's gaze landed on Jiang Chun. When Jiang Chun heard this, he did not wait for Li Yuan to speak and immediately shook his head. No, I want to go to the Heaven and Earth Pavilion. Bang! However, before Jiang Chun could continue speaking, Lan Sui suddenly struck and knocked Jiang Chun unconscious. Then, Lan Sui waved his hand and took out a silk book and some pills. He smiled and handed them to Li Yuan. It's just a disciple. This is a small token of my appreciation. Li Yuan frowned. Lan Sui was openly bribing him. This was not appropriate, right? However, as the #1 academy in the godless continent, it was fine for the Heaven and Earth Pavilion to take in 1 or 2 fewer disciples. Moreover, Li Yuan knew his stuff. He could tell that the things Lan Sui gave were very precious. All right, I'll give you one, Li Yuan said softly. Just like that, he threw the unconscious Jiang Chun to Lan Sui in front of everyone. Goodbye. Lan Sui hurriedly spoke, seeming to be afraid that Li Yuan would go back on his word. He carried Jiang Chun and soared into the sky. At the same time, outside the Quadrant Divine Institute, a white-haired old man soared into the sky and converged with Lan Sui. So you were prepared long ago. Wu Xian curled his lips. That white-haired old man's strength was able to contend with Ji Chongyang. Then now that he thought about it, Lan Sui came to the Quadrant Divine Institute this time with the intention of snatching away Jiang Chun from the beginning. Lan Sui, Elder Qing, you can't take this person away. Put him down. This is the person my Jiang clan wants. Right at this moment, the Martial Pavilion and Jiang clan's experts appeared in a few directions outside the Quadrant Divine Institute, and they stopped Lan Sui and Elder Qing. Among them, Ji Chongyang, King of Hell, and a few grand elders of the Jiang clan had already appeared. When these people gathered together, the entire godless continent would tremble. And these experts appeared together just for Jiang Chun alone. He hasn't entered my Billow Academy yet. Logically speaking, he's a Heaven and Earth Pavilion disciple now, Lan Sui said with a chuckle. You want him? Then go and ask Li Yuan first. What? You even want to make a move against my Heaven and Earth Pavilion disciple? At this moment, Li Yuan also flew to Lan Sui and Elder Qing's side for the sake of face. His eyes focused as he looked at the Martial Pavilion's people and said, back then, when Linlang Wentian cultivated in the Heaven and Earth Pavilion, I didn't see him so unreasonable, and I also didn't see him act like this in front of me. Chapter 232. This, Deputy Pavilion Master Li Yuan, this kid. Ji Chongyang opened his mouth, but did not know what to say. Li Yuan was right. The current Martial Pavilion Master was once a disciple of Heaven and Earth Pavilion. Now, with this relationship, what could Ji Chongyang say? Even if Linlang Wentian came in person, she would probably have to let Jiang Chun go because of her pride. As for the Jiang family, they did not even dare to breathe loudly in front of Li Yuan. After all, as the Deputy Pavilion Master of Heaven and Earth Pavilion, Li Yuan was not someone the Jiang family could contend with. Moreover, Jiang Chun had used the spirit-fusing technique in a fit of anger and killed a few Jiang family elites. Now that the Jiang family had suffered a great loss, they did not want to go against Heaven and Earth Pavilion. Moreover, there were still Jiang family disciples cultivating in Heaven and Earth Pavilion. If they fell out with Heaven and Earth Pavilion, then the Jiang family disciples cultivating in Heaven and Earth Pavilion might be bullied. Everyone, we will meet again in the future, Elder Qing said with a smile. After waving his hand, he left with Lan Sui. All of this seemed to be in Lan Sui and Elder Qing's plan. This kid has entered Billow Academy. I'm afraid it will be difficult to deal with him in the future, Ji Chongyang said with a sigh. The Jiang family members' faces were extremely ugly. Billow Academy was the second best academy in Godless Mainland. Its foundation was unfathomable. Even Martial Pavilion was not willing to provoke Billow Academy. Even if the Martial Pavilion pressured the Billow Academy might not even care. The Martial Arts Pavilion and the Jiangs wanted to kill Jiang Chun. It was not that Jiang Chun was strong, but Jiang Chun had repeatedly clashed with Martial Pavilion and Jiang family, causing Martial Pavilion and Jiang family to be embarrassed. He didn't want to kill Jiang Chun for revenge. He only wanted to save face. Sometimes, what the top families and sects cared more about was their reputation. However, now that Jiang Chun had entered Billow Academy, it would be too difficult to kill Jiang Chun in the future. Sigh. Ji Chongyang let out a long sigh. If not for the fact that Linlang Wentian was not in the Martial Pavilion, no one would be able to stop him from killing Jiang Chun. It was just like how Linlang Wentian had personally fought against Marquis Begu, Yi Minji, and the Madman's Laughter. Merely, the one that had attacked that time was not Linlang Wentian's actual body. Instead, it was merely a clone. Otherwise, how could the Pavilion Master of the Martial Pavilion be so weak? Previously, when Xikong Zhongming had entered the Martial Pavilion, he had also returned injured. The person who had injured Xikong Zhongming was also not Linlang Wentian. Instead, it was someone else. From this, one could see how powerful the Martial Pavilion was. Unfortunately, everything was too coincidental. It was so coincidental that a huge force like the Martial Pavilion was actually unable to kill Jiang Chun. There will be plenty of opportunities to kill him. The people from the Jiang clan had ugly expressions. They glared fiercely in the direction that Lan Sui and Elder Qing left, then turned around and left. Ji Chongyang and the others also left. They had to report back to the Martial Pavilion. At this moment, the one who felt the most terrible was not the people from the Martial Pavilion or the Jiang clan, but Li Yuan. Li Yuan was no fool. For Jiang Chun to be able to attract the attention of the Martial Pavilion and the Jiang clan, they did not hesitate to lose face and kill him. From the looks of it, Jiang Chun naturally had something extraordinary about him. Then, giving Jiang Chun to the Billow Academy, to be honest, Li Yuan was somewhat regretting it now. However, what was said, how could there be any logic in asking the person who had been given away to return? Moreover, the Heaven and Earth Pavilion could not bring themselves to ask for Jiang Chun back. And with the Billow Academy's stance, it was even more impossible for them to return Jiang Chun. Sigh. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have given Jiang Chun to the Billow Academy. Li Yuan sighed and flew towards the Heaven and Earth Pavilion with Lan Xuanji and Fire God. A day later, in a cave abode at the back of the mountain of the Billow Academy, Jiang Chun woke up quietly. He felt a sharp pain at the back of his head. He woke up with a grimace. After looking around, he happened to see Lan Sui and Elder Qing looking at him with a smile. Where am I? Jiang Chun was on guard. After all, he knew that he was in a bad situation. Billow Academy. From now on, you'll be Elder Qing's last disciple, Lan Sui said with a smile. Billow Academy? Jiang Chen's eyes widened. He did not go to the Heaven and Earth Pavilion after waking up, but ended up in the Billow Academy. You tricked me? Jiang Chen was furious when he came back to his senses. However, looking at the unfathomable Lan Sui and Elder Qing, Jiang Chun lost his temper instantly. What could he do after being tricked? He could not defeat them. After calming down, Jiang Chun asked in confusion, "Why must I enter the Billow Academy?" The Billow Academy was filled with geniuses and monsters. How could they lack a disciple like him? There must be a secret behind this. Because of the everlasting love, Elder Qing said straightforwardly. Let's get straight to the point. If you give me the everlasting emotion secret art, I'll give you something of equal value. What do you think? When Jiang Chen heard that, his heart skipped a beat. Naturally, he was not willing to do so. The everlasting emotion secret art was one of the top 10 sound-type martial skills. In the holy world of the nine heavens, the everlasting emotion secret art was ranked among the top. Now, he wanted Jiang Chun to give away the everlasting emotion secret art. What a joke. Don't be anxious. Listen to me slowly. Elder Qing knew what Jiang Chun was thinking. He waved his hand and took out a long whistle. He said, "This flute is called the unmoving emotion secret art." Jiang Chun did not say anything. He sat at the side and waited quietly. He wanted to hear what Elder Qing meant. There are thousands of martial skills in the world. However, there are always a few martial skills that are extraordinary. Elder Qing said, for example, the everlasting emotion secret art is extraordinary. My unmoving emotion secret art is the same. The everlasting emotion secret art and the unmoving emotion secret art are ranked second and fourth. Do you know what the number one sound-type martial skill is? Elder Qing looked at Jiang Chun meaningfully. He seemed to think that Jiang Chun knew what he meant. However, Jiang Chun was still in a daze after being knocked out and listening to so many words. How could he understand what Elder Qing meant? At that moment, Jiang Chun shook his head and said, "Just say it." Elder Qing was stunned. He was surprised. Perhaps, in his heart, with Jiang Chun's talent, he would be able to understand with a little reminder. The number one sound-type martial skill is called the unmoving emotion secret art, Elder Qing said. People only know about the unmoving emotion secret art. However, they don't know that the unmoving emotion secret art and the unmoving emotion secret art are required to cultivate the unmoving emotion secret art. I understand. At this moment, even a fool would know. Jiang Chun nodded. His eyes were shining as he asked, "I'll give you the everlasting emotion secret art, and you'll give me the unmoving emotion secret art. In this way, both of us can obtain the unmoving emotion secret art, right?" "That's right." Elder Qing nodded and said, "How about it? Have you thought it through? Both of us can obtain the unmoving emotion secret art. As for you, you can obtain the protection of the Billowing Wave Academy. You more or less know about the foundation of the Billowing Wave Academy, right? The Four Directions Divine Institutes don't dare to protect you, but the Billowing Wave Academy can," Elder Qing said seriously. Jiang Chun naturally agreed with this. After all, the second-ranked academy had a deep foundation. Even the Martial Pavilion would be afraid of it. Moreover, a force like the academy was related to the various sects, clans, and even the various great inheritances. Under normal circumstances, no matter how strong the Martial Pavilion was, they wouldn't dare to touch the academy, let alone the second-ranked academy. Chapter 233. It was hard to say how strong the Billowing Wave Academy was. However, just the fact that the Billowing Wave Academy was ranked second in the top 10 academies was enough to show how deep its foundation was and how strong its strength was. Perhaps the Billowing Wave Academy was inferior to the Martial Pavilion in a head-on confrontation. However, the Martial Pavilion dared to touch the Quadrangle Divine Institute, which was ranked last, but they definitely wouldn't dare to touch the Billowing Wave Academy. Otherwise, what was the point of having a ranking? Ranking wasn't just a symbol of strength, it was also a symbol of status and status. What would the other academies think if they touched the second-ranked Billowing Wave Academy? Once they touched the Billowing Wave Academy, everyone would be in danger. If the other academies joined forces to go against the Martial Pavilion, it would be a loss for the Martial Pavilion. Of course, Jiang Chun had thought of all of this. However, when he thought of how he could have entered the Heaven and Earth Pavilion but was knocked unconscious and brought to the Billowing Wave Academy, Jiang Chun didn't feel good in his heart. Then what kind of status am I in the Billowing Wave Academy? Jiang Chun asked. After thinking for a short while, Jiang Chun thought it through. Since the Billowing Wave Academy could protect him, he would stay. Moreover, he could obtain the Exalted Technique. However, if he stayed, he should at least be given an identity, right? The dignified Tian Chen Divine King was doing well in the Quadrangle Divine Institute. Now that he came to the Billowing Wave Academy, he couldn't be an outer court disciple, right? Not to mention becoming a saint, but an inner court disciple, or even a personal disciple, it wouldn't be too much, right? However, to Jiang Qin's surprise, Elder Qing actually shook his head after hearing this and said, one step at a time. Start as an outer court disciple. Outer court disciple. Jiang Qin was dumbfounded. With his strength, if he became an outer court disciple, wouldn't he be bullying others? Jiang Qin could defeat the two strongest disciples of the Quadrangle Divine Institute. No matter which academy he was in, he could be the chief disciple, right? Now, he was going to be an outer court disciple? The rules of the Billowing Wave Academy are very strict. I'm already breaking the rules by agreeing to protect you. If it wasn't for the exalted technique, how could I break the rules of the Billowing Wave Academy? Elder Qing explained, what's more, you're just seeking protection. No matter what disciple you become, you don't really care, right? Jiang Qin frowned and said, even if that's the case, isn't the status of an outer court disciple a little low? Trees live by their bark, while people live by their faces. Jiang Qin was very prideful. Then, I'll make an exception for you. As an outer yard disciple, you have all the rights of an inner yard disciple, Elder Qing said. That's the only way. Okay. Jiang Qin smiled bitterly. Since they had come to this point, even if he still didn't agree, what else could he do? After that, Jiang Qin and Elder Qing exchanged the everlasting emotion secret art and the unruffled emotion secret art. Then the two of them stayed in the same cave and started to meditate and cultivate. The combination of the everlasting emotion secret art and the unruffled emotion secret art could become the #1 sound type martial skill, the unruffled emotion secret art. And this kind of martial skill, even in the 9 heavens divine realm, was enough to shake the 4 directions and be ranked in the top. It was also because of this that Jiang Qin found it difficult to comprehend after combining the 2 martial skills. After half a day, Jiang Qin opened his eyes. When he saw Elder Qing's confused face, he couldn't help but ask, what's wrong? It can't be combined. Elder Qing frowned and said, it's impossible. Why can't the 2 martial skills be combined together? When Jiang Qin heard that, he couldn't help but laugh in his heart. The combination of the 2 martial skills seemed as simple as 1 + 1. But in reality, without extraordinary talent and proficiency in various Dao techniques, it was impossible to combine them. I didn't combine them either. It seems like I'll have to take it slow. Jiang Qin sighed. Of course, he couldn't tell Elder Qing that the moment he received the unruffled emotion secret art, he had combined it into the supreme unruffled emotion secret art. You didn't combine them either? Elder Qing frowned. After thinking for a while, he nodded and sighed. That's right. After all, this is the top sound type martial skill. How can it be so easy to combine them? After saying that, Elder Qing stood up and handed the outer court disciples' clothes to Jiang Qin. He gave a few words of advice and then left. At this moment, after Jiang Qin received the outer court disciples' clothes, he was in a mess. It was because the color of the clothes was too green. How do I wear this? Jiang Qin's face darkened. He wondered if this was the saying, if you want to live a rich life, you have to have some green on you. Jiang Qin wore a look of disgust and helplessness. After he put on his clothes, he walked out of the back mountain and went to the Wave Institute's outer courtyard. The outer court disciples had ordinary treatment. They didn't have a cave to stay in. They lived in a residence like a bamboo house. Elder Qing had already arranged everything for Jiang Qin, so Jiang Qin didn't have to worry about anything. After entering his bamboo house, Jiang Qin sat cross-legged and planned to cultivate. He had stayed in the king's domain for a long time. His foundation was stable. Jiang Qin thought it was time for him to make a breakthrough. However, he didn't cultivate for long. Several clamoring voices came from outside the bamboo house. Abandoned son of the Jiang clan and expelled by the Sifang Divine Institute. Why did you come to the Wave Academy? Are you here to beg for protection? Abandoned son is abandoned son. No matter where you go, you will be despised. Hearing the voices outside the bamboo house, Jiang Qin's face darkened. To him, the word abandoned son was his reverse scale. Not for anything else, But for the original owner of this body, Jiang Chen couldn't forgive these words. The house is quiet and elegant. The dogs bark in the mountain stream. Jiang Chen shouted coldly. If you say another word, you will be crippled. Abandoned son. The Wave Academy has strict rules. You dare to cripple us? You are just an abandoned son. How capable can you be? If you were really capable, why didn't the Jiang clan want you? Several clamoring voices came from outside the house again. This time, they were full of mockery. At this moment, Jiang Chen couldn't sit still anymore. He had already warned them. If they spoke again, they couldn't blame anyone. Boom! In the next moment, the door of the bamboo house didn't open. However, a pure gold power of heaven and earth rushed out from the door of the bamboo house. Like an azure dragon, it suppressed the few youths outside the bamboo house onto the ground. Furthermore, the power of heaven and earth was like a sharp blade that sliced through their meridians and destroyed their dantian. It completely destroyed the cultivation of these few youths. You really dare to cripple us? At this moment, screams and roars kept coming from outside the bamboo house. Some people regretted that they shouldn't have offended Jiang Chen. Some people were resentful and furious. However, Jiang Chen sneered. He didn't even want to leave the house when facing these small fries. He thought that he could have some peace and quiet after dealing with these small fries. However, he didn't expect that before Jiang Chen could cultivate, the door of the bamboo house was kicked open. Looking over, he saw a middle-aged man in a black robe standing outside the bamboo house. He was glaring at Jiang Chen angrily. Attacking in private and crippling your fellow disciples. You have violated the rules of the Wave Academy. According to the rules of the disciplinary hall, I will bring you to the disciplinary hall to receive punishment. The man shouted angrily. Chapter 234. The black-robed man was the deacon of Billow Academy's discipline hall, Xiegao. He was in charge of disciplining the outer yard disciples. Anyone who committed a crime would be punished, and he would deal with it personally. However, Jiang Chen's face was gloomy, and there was a flame of anger burning in his heart. He had just crippled someone, and Xiegao came. How could it be so coincidental? Or did Xiegao predict that these people would find trouble with Jiang Chen, and Jiang Chen wouldn't be able to hold himself back and take action? If so, all of this was premeditated? I just came to Billow Academy, and there are already people targeting me? Jiang Chen chuckled. He stood up calmly and walked to Xiegao's side. He said softly, "Let's go." Jiang Chen didn't want to resist, and he knew it was useless. After all, Elder Qing had told him that the Billow Academy's rules were very strict. Since he had committed a crime, Jiang Chen would accept the punishment that he deserved. That would be enough. Moreover, with Elder Qing and Lan Sui in Billow Academy, Jiang Chen believed that Xiegao wouldn't dare to punish him severely. Humph! You've just entered the academy, and you've already committed such a crime. If it weren't for Elder Qing and Dean Lan Sui, I would have crippled you according to the law, Xiegao said coldly. Then, he glanced at Jiang Chen and walked toward the discipline hall. Jiang Chen curled his lip and ignored Xiegao's words. Cripple him? Heh, I'll ask Elder Qing if he agrees. Billow Academy was very big. There were 3 outer yards, 2 middle yards, 1 inner yard, and 2 outer yards. Jiang Chen was an outer yard 3rd yard. There were the most disciples here, and his cultivation was also the weakest in Billow Academy. At that moment, when a group of young people saw Jiang Chen following behind Xiegao, they were gloating. He just came, right? He even dares to violate the Billow Academy's rules. He's really courting death. Deacon Xiegao is going to take action personally. Even if he doesn't die, he'll lose a layer of skin. Many people followed, wanting to see how Jiang Chen would be punished. As for the person involved, Jiang Chen was still very calm. Soon, after passing through the plaza, Jiang Chen and Xiegao entered the discipline hall. After all, no one would commit crimes on a normal day, and no one would be willing to come here. According to the rules of the Billowing Wave Academy, privately attacking and crippling a fellow disciple is a serious crime. At this moment, Xiegao coughed lightly and began to talk about Jiang Chen's crimes. Furthermore, his voice was very loud. The crowd of disciples standing outside the discipline hall could hear him clearly. Holy shit! Crippled a fellow disciple? What's going on with this kid? A life for a life. Even if he doesn't die, his cultivation will be crippled. Many people cried out in surprise. They knew that in the Billowing Wave Academy, crippling one's cultivation base and killing someone were the most severe punishments. Cut the crap and get it done quickly. Don't waste my time. Jiangchen glanced at him and sneered. If you want to deal with me, just say it. I won't complain to Elder Qing. Hurry up. Kid, you said it yourself, Xie Gao said coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, a spell formation appeared out of thin air in the discipline hall. Around the spell formation, runes flickered like divine light. There was also an invisible pressure that shrouded Jiang Chen's body. At a closer look, these runes were like sharp swords that flickered with sharpness. For the sake of Elder Qing and Dean Lan Sui, I have already suppressed the power of this spell formation to 70%. As long as you can withstand it, this matter will be over, Xie Gao said. As soon as he said that, the people outside the discipline hall fell silent instantly. This was because when ordinary people received the punishment of the spell formation, the power of the spell formation was only 30%. Now, although Xie Gao had suppressed the power of the spell formation, in fact, he had increased it by 40%. The people outside the discipline hall were not stupid. They had already seen that Xie Gao was going to destroy Jiang Chun. As outer yard disciples, they did not dare to interfere in this matter. All of them could only close their eyes and keep quiet. Jiang Chun naturally did not know this. At this moment, he calmly walked into the spell formation and closed his eyes. Boom! In the next moment, the spell formation exploded. The runes turned into sharp swords and rushed toward Jiang Chen's body. If these runes rushed into the body, they would definitely crush Jiang Chen's 8 extraordinary meridians, Dantian, Qi blood, and even spiritual meridians. It was a pity that Jiang Chen's body was so strong. The runes, which were as sharp as swords, were shattered as soon as they made contact with Jiang Chen's skin. They turned into wisps of spiritual power and dissipated. What? This spell formation with 70% of its power can't even break the skin? At this moment, not to mention the people outside the discipline hall, even Xie Gao was dumbfounded. Just how strong must one's physical body be to be able to do this? If it's only 30%, won't it be like scratching an itch for this guy? Scratching an itch? If 70% of its power is like scratching an itch, what's 30%? It's like a breeze. Maybe it's even a little bit sensitive. Everyone was speechless. They thought to themselves that another monster had arrived in the outer yard. Not long after, the spell formation stopped. Jiang Chen opened his eyes. His expression was calm as he asked softly, "Is this enough?" Then, without waiting for Xie Gao to remove the spell formation, Jiang Chen waved his hand and the entire spell formation collapsed. Then, under the shocked and admiring gazes of the crowd, Jiang Chen left suavely. This kid, Xie Gao's face was gloomy, and his eyes were filled with hatred. Just as Jiang Chen thought, this matter was arranged by someone to deal with Jiang Chen. Unfortunately, Xie Gao had failed. Then, it would be difficult to make Jiang Chen commit the same mistake again. After all, Jiang Chen was not a fool. He knew that the Surge Academy's rules were strict, so how could he break them again? Of course, this was what Xie Gao thought. As for whether Jiang Chen would break the Surge Academy's rules again, only God knew. Did you hear? A fierce person came to the third outer yard. A spell formation with 70% of its power couldn't even break through his defense. It doesn't matter if that guy keeps breaking the rules in the third outer yard from now on. Anyway, the spell formation can't do anything to him. Half a day later, what Jiang Chen did in the discipline hall spread throughout the entire outer yard. Almost all the disciples in the third outer yard were talking about Jiang Chen. After Jiang Chen returned from the discipline hall, he sat cross-legged in the bamboo house and cultivated quietly. Just like that, 3 days passed. In these 3 days, Jiang Chen's cultivation kept increasing, and he was about to break through. Moreover, due to his solid foundation, Jiang Chun did not plan to stop and directly break through to the honorable realm. At the same time, a major event had occurred in the Discipline Hall during these 3 days. The deacons of the Third Outer Yards Discipline Hall, Xiegao, Pu Tuo, and Cheng Xiao, changed the punishment rules of the Discipline Hall. The reason for the change was because of one person, Jiang Chun. Chapter 235. Below Academy's outer court, 3 courtyards, a storm surged. And as the person involved, Jiang Chun, was still cultivating inside the bamboo house. All the way until 3 days later, Jiang Chun successfully broke through, all occupations reaching Empyrean realm. At the same time, a scorching airflow appeared in Jiang Chun's body. Looking closely, there was actually strands of purple blood. The purple blood flowed all over his body, akin to a raging fire burning, incomparably painful. But it also gave Jiang Chun an explosive power. All the way until an hour later, the purple blood converged at the glabella, turning into a purple rune, like a hexagram. What's going on? Jiang Chun was puzzled. Looking inside his body, he did not discover anything special. And right at this moment, in his mind, one incomplete memory after another emerged. His memories were like a slideshow, scattered and incomplete. In fact, there were even some places that were completely blank. These memories could not be connected, but it also made Jiang Chun alarmed. There was a portion of the memory that was actually that scene he saw in the ancient skyspan ruins. Those million gods falling, that unknown and mysterious enemy, the flames of war and divine light that filled the sky, filled with smoke and sorrow. It was as if he was there personally, or rather, Jiang Chun had personally experienced it before. This kind of feeling made Jiang Chun very uncomfortable. Headache. All the way until a long time passed, Jiang Chun shook his head, seriously unable to integrate these incomplete memories and connect them. However, Jiang Chun also realized one thing. His identity seemed to be extraordinary. As for the specifics, Jiang Chun could not say it either. At the same time, Jiang Chun also understood one thing. That purple blood originated from the myriad transformations Divine King's inheritance. Previously, inside the ancient skyspan ruins, Jiang Chun had once erected a tombstone for the myriad transformations Divine King under the lead of that grave-sweeping old man and obtained a drop of blood essence. And that drop of blood essence was sealed by that grave-sweeping old man. Now that he thought about it, it should be because Jiang Chun's cultivation had increased, causing the seal to loosen. That was why a trace of the drop of inherited essence blood had leaked out. Jiang Chun had even thought that the additional memories in his mind might not be his, but the myriad transformations Divine King's. Who cares whose it is, as long as it's mine now? Jiang Chun whispered. Memories were not important. At least, that was what Jiang Chun believed at the moment. Right now, he felt that the most important thing was strength. As for the strand of purple blood, it gathered between his eyebrows. Jiang Chun gave it a try and found that it could be used. However, the power contained within the purple blood was extremely powerful, and the backlash was even more terrifying. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Jiang Chun would not use this power. After a few breaths, Jiang Chun got up and walked out of the bamboo house. He wanted to go out and get some fresh air and relax. After all, the days of secluded cultivation were rather boring. However, just as he walked out of the bamboo house, Jiang Chun saw a few youths outside the house looking at him with ill intentions. Looking at them, it seemed that they had been waiting outside the bamboo house for a long time. Looking for trouble again? Jiang Chun frowned, feeling somewhat displeased. One should know that this was only the outer court of Billow Academy. No matter how talented the disciples here were, how much cultivation did they have? These people, with such little strength, were looking for trouble with him? Weren't they courting death? Abandon peace. Abandon peace. Abandon peace. At that moment, the few youths standing outside the bamboo house spoke one after another. Their words were very uniform. and they only said the word abandoned peace. Heh, you are forcing me to make a move and want me to enter the disciplinary hall, right? Jiangchen raised his eyebrows and said mockingly, "It's a pity that the disciplinary hall's lousy array is useless against me. Abandoned peace. Abandoned peace." However, those youngsters didn't pay any attention to Jiang Chun, and they kept calling him abandoned son. At that moment, Jiang Chun was really angry. "Fine, I'll satisfy you," Jiang Chun said softly. With a wave of his hand, a burst of power of heaven and earth exploded. Like a flood, it instantly drowned the few youths. Poof! Poof! After a few muffled sounds, the smell of blood, and miserable shrieks, the few youths who had called him abandoned peace all fell to the ground, their cultivation crippled. "Jiang Chun, don't you know the rules of Billow Academy? Breaking the rules again and again. Where do you think this place is?" At that moment, Xiagao appeared. His appearance was very coincidental. No, to be precise, he appeared very punctually. The few youths had just been crippled by Jiang Chun, and Xiagao appeared. What did this mean? Anyone with a discerning eye knew, and Jiang Chun naturally knew as well. But so what? Jiang Chun also understood the rules of the discipline hall of the outer yard to punish the disciples. At most, they would stay in the broken formation for a while. As long as they could persevere, all the mistakes would be forgotten. As for the broken formation, Jiang Chun never took it to heart. He was proficient in all professions. How could Jiang Chun be afraid of a broken formation? "Stop talking. Let's go and break the formation, okay?" Jiang Chun curled his lips and said, "So boring." "Humph! This time, don't say that I didn't give face to Elder Qing and Dean Lan Sui," Xiagao said in a low voice, but he was secretly happy, because in these few days, the rules of the outer yard had been changed. Anyone who made a mistake would be punished by the broken formation. The highest power could reach 90%. Xiagao didn't believe that a broken formation with 90% power couldn't cripple Jiang Chun. After a dozen breaths in the discipline hall, at that moment, there were still only Jiang Chun and Xiagao in the discipline hall. But outside, it was crowded with people. Looking around, there were close to 1,000 disciples of the outer yard 3 yards, and they were all crowded outside. It was because they all wanted to see how the person who could make the discipline hall change the rules in history looked like and what ability he had. For thousands of years, he's the only one who can make the discipline hall change the rules. Even if he's really crippled this time, he can still leave his name in the Billow Academy. At that moment, Jiang Chun was very calm. He stood in the center of the discipline hall and said softly, "Let's begin. I'll say this first. You made a mistake first, so I'm punishing you. This is the rule. Even if you complain to Elder Qing and Dean Lan Sui, I'm in the right," Xiagao said seriously. Xiagao knew how Jiang Chun entered the Billow Academy. He said this now because he was worried that Elder Qing and Lan Sui would find trouble with him. However, when he thought of the identity of the person behind him, Xiagao wasn't so afraid anymore. "So long-winded. Start the formation." Jiang Chun waved his hand. "Hurry up, don't waste my time." "Okay," Xiagao sneered. With a wave of his hand, the cultivation-destroying formation rose on the spot. Boom! This time, the cultivation-destroying formation activated 90% of its power. The runes were like golden sharp swords, and they went straight for Jiang Chun's body. "The power of the cultivation-destroying formation is quite strong this time," Jiang Chun said softly. However, even though the crack formation's power had become stronger, Jiang Chun had also achieved a breakthrough. Ding! Dang! In the next moment, everyone saw the golden light explode, and they heard the sound of metal colliding. Then, when the sound disappeared and the golden light dissipated, the group of people stared with their eyes wide open. Looking over, they saw Jiang Chun standing in the same place, unharmed. He was dusting his torn clothes. I said, "Isn't this too much?" Before Xiagao could react, Jiang Chun's face darkened, and he glared at Xiagao. Chapter 236. What do you want to do? Complain to Elder Qing and Dean Lan Sui. You made a mistake first. Even if you complain, I'm in the right, Xie Gao hurriedly said. However, to everyone's surprise, Jiangchen shook his head and said coldly, Elder Qing only gave me this set of outer court clothes. Now that the clothes are torn, how do you want me to wear them? Not to mention Xie Gao, the entire area outside the discipline hall was completely silent after he spoke. Being struck by a 90% power broken formation, he was completely unscathed. This was already shocking enough. And now, Jiang Chen's words made everyone speechless. Are you kidding me? Is this the time to be concerned about clothes? Could this be the difference between me and him? Clothes? After a short silence, the crowd was in an uproar. Someone sighed. This might be the thought of a monstrous genius. There were also people who covered their eyes, really not wanting to see Jiang Chen. This guy was too good at pretending. Jiang Chen was the only one who thought he was right. After coming out of the Sifang Divine Courtyard, he didn't bring anything. He didn't even bring clothes. And Billow Academy had a rule that every disciple could only receive one set of clothes every year. Now, the only set of clothes in a year was torn. How could he wear it? Could it be that he had to wear such a tattered set of clothes for a year? Jiang Chen don't want face. For some things, Jiang Chen could be shameless, such as in front of his own disciples. But for some things, even if it broke the sky, Jiang Chen still wanted face. Just like now, Jiang Chen had just entered Billow Academy for a few days. Could it be that in the next year, he had to wear this tattered set of clothes? Back then, in the Nine Heavens divine world, holy clothes and divine clothes were all over the cupboard. At that time, Jiang Chen was very picky. Now, although he had come to the godless continent, he should still dress up well. According to Billow Academy's rules, you can only receive one set of clothes a year, Xie Gao said in a deep voice and waved his hand. Let's go. Sure. Jiang Chen chuckled and turned to leave. However, as soon as he walked out of the door, someone screamed. This was because when Jiang Chen saw a disciple who was about the same size as him, he immediately took off his clothes. Deacon Xie, he stole my clothes? The disciple's face turned red. He covered his face and almost fainted from anger. There are so many people here. You don't want to rob others, but you want to rob me? Big brother, I'm also an outer core disciple, and I only have one set of clothes. Stealing from others. Do you really think that the rules of the disciplinary hall are just for show? At this moment, Xie Gao was enraged. He had just punished Jiang Chen, and the moment he stepped out of the door, this guy committed another crime. However, after Xie Gao finished speaking, he fell silent. After all, even a 90% power broken formation could not do anything to Jiang Chen. Then, a 100% power broken formation should be ineffective against Jiang Chen, right? Since that was the case, what could the disciplinary hall do to Jiang Chen if he committed a crime in the outer court? Okay, I'll try to crack the formation again, Jiang Chen said with a smile. Then he walked into the discipline hall. This time, Jiang Chen put the clothes he had snatched aside so that they wouldn't be destroyed by the stupid formation again. Get out of here! Immediately, Xie Gao's face darkened as he pointed at the door of the disciplinary hall. He did not feel good about it. An ordinary disciple would not be able to withstand 30 to 40% of the power of the broken formation. However, when it came to Jiang Chen, 90% of the power was useless. At this moment, Xie Gao could not do anything to Jiang Chen. You said it yourself. Jiang Chen chuckled. He put on his clothes and turned to leave. He thought of ways to anger Jiang Chen and wanted to destroy Jiang Chen with the broken formation. In the end, he could not do anything to Jiang Chen. The disciplinary hall in the outer court was just a decoration to Jiang Chen at this moment. At the same time, in Elder Qing's cave at the back mountain of the Billowing Wave Academy. Have you investigated it? Elder Qing sat cross-legged on the futon and narrowed his eyes. There was a wisp of light and coldness in his pupils. Elder Qing knew everything that happened in the outer court these few days. However, with Elder Qing's status, he did not want to interfere with such trivial matters. However, not interfering did not mean that Elder Qing did not care. One had to know that Jiang Chen was someone that he and Lan Sui snatched from the heaven and earth pavilion. If they did not care, why did they snatch him in the first place? Did they snatch him just because of the everlasting love secret? That would be looking down on Elder Qing's foresight. I've investigated it thoroughly. It was Jiang Luma, a disciple of the first courtyard of the outer courtyard. According to the Jiang family's wishes, they spent many treasures to invite Xie Gao in private to cripple Jiang Chun, Lan Sui said. The disciplinary hall in the outer court should not be able to do anything to that kid, right? Elder Qing asked. These words were actually a question, but Elder Qing already knew in his heart. Regardless of whether it was the first or third courtyard, he knew the rules of the disciplinary hall in the outer court. They wanted to destroy Jiang Chun just by breaking the cultivation formation. This was Xie Gao looking down on Jiang Chun or Elder Qing. What should we do now? Lan Sui asked. Do you need me to step in? The rules of the Billowing Wave Academy are strict. Jiang Chun did nothing wrong by breaking the cultivation formation. However, as a deacon of the disciplinary hall, Xie Gao maliciously attacked him in private. We can't just let this matter go. The Billowing Wave Academy has been peaceful for a long time. Some people have already forgotten the iron blood of the Billowing Wave Academy and the anger of us old people, Elder Qing said softly. Let's continue to make trouble. We'll settle it together when the time comes. You still want to make trouble? Lan Sui narrowed his eyes as a storm rose in his heart. He knew what Elder Qing meant. He wanted to use Jiang Chun as a bait to clean up the Billowing Wave Academy. However, when he thought about it, the Billowing Wave Academy should have been cleaned up long ago. Currently, the seemingly peaceful Billowing Wave Academy actually had a lot of internal conflicts. Many sects, clans, and forces had infiltrated the academy. The Billowing Wave Academy was no longer the academy it used to be. The dean of the Billowing Wave Academy was in seclusion all year round, ignoring the academy's matters. Now, the ones in charge of the academy were Elder Qing and two other people. Therefore, the Billowing Wave Academy was divided into three factions. The Billowing Wave Academy faction led by Elder Qing, the various clans and sects that had infiltrated the academy, and the Martial Pavilion faction. Elder Qing's thoughts were simple. The academy should behave like an academy. What sects and Martial Pavilion faction wanted to interfere with the academy's matters? If they interfered, could the Billowing Wave Academy still be called an academy? Elder Qing, don't we need to discuss this matter with the dean? Lan Sui asked. After thinking for a while, he said with a worried expression, now, the three deans of the outer courtyard and the two deans of the middle courtyard have joined the sections. As for the two deans of the earth courtyard and heaven courtyard, the current situation is still unclear. Lan Sui said in a deep voice, as for me, the dean of the inner courtyard, it seems that I have no power. With me here, do what you need to do. Elder Qing narrowed his eyes. If I can't clean up the Billowing Wave Academy, I, Qing Kong, will be erased from this world. Chapter 237. Elder Qing, you. Lan Sui opened his mouth and wanted to persuade Elder Qing. However, since Elder Qing had said that, what else could Lan Sui say? Then, Lan Sui left. Elder Qing looked into the distance with a smile, as if he could see the scenery in the distance. Kid, don't let me down. I'm betting the future of Billowing Academy on you, Elder Qing said softly. Meanwhile, in front of Jiang Chen's residence in the third outer yard, not long after he returned from the discipline hall, someone came to look for him. The person was the deacon of the discipline hall, Li Hao. He was holding a silk letter and placed it in front of Jiang Chen. He said seriously, the three deans of the outer yard and the discipline hall have jointly reviewed it and allowed you to become a disciple of the middle yard. Go to the middle yard immediately. Jiang Chen smiled when he heard that. He took the silk letter and returned to the bamboo house. Li Hao glanced at Jiang Chen and left without saying anything. Oh, the outer yard can't do anything to me, so they sent me to the middle yard in a hurry. They want to use the rules of the middle yard to suppress me, cripple me, or kill me. Jiang Chen looked at the silk letter in his hand. How could he not know the meaning of the silk letter? But so what? According to Jiang Chen's knowledge, the middle yard was divided into the upper yard and the lower yard. The disciples of the lower yard were mostly at the intermediate honorable realm, and a few of them were at the upper honorable realm. Therefore, the rules of the discipline hall of the middle yard and the lower honorable realm were only suitable for intermediate and upper honorable realm disciples. Although Jiang Chun had just broken through to the lower honorable realm, his strength was not as weak as it was now. The clothes of the outer yard disciples are so ugly. It's so green that it makes me panic. I wonder if the clothes of the middle yard disciples are nicer, Jiang Chun muttered. He did not care about the discipline hall at all. The only thing he cared about was whether the clothes were nice or not. If it turned out to be green again, Jiang Chun would be annoyed. After tidying up, Jiang Chun stood up and walked to the lower yard of the middle yard. When they passed through the gate of Astral 3 and entered Astral 2, a young man walked up to them. This young man seemed to be coming for Jiang Chun, his eyes flashing with hostility. Qinchuan Jiang family, Jiang Luma. After a few breaths, the young man walked up to Jiang Chun and introduced himself. And then, Jiang Chun raised his eyebrows. He didn't have a good impression of the Jiang family. I'm here to tell you that you're dead meat once you enter the lower house of the Central Court, Jiang Luma said coldly. The Central Court's disciplinary hall is waiting for you. Oh, Jiang Chun nodded. Suddenly, he smiled wickedly and asked, So, I'm in the second outer courtyard right now, right? What do you mean? Jiang Luma was stunned. Boom! However, before Jiang Luma could react, Jiang Chun had already struck Jiang Luma's head with his palm. Under this palm, the power of heaven and earth was like a flood, shattering the top of his head. As for Jiang Luma, he died instantly. Sigh, why did you have to come here to die? Jiang Chun sighed and waved the blood off his hand. From the corner of his eye, he saw Xie Gao and the disciplinary hall not far away. Killing someone in the Billow Academy was a serious crime. One would have to bear the full power of the broken formation. And now, Jiang Chun had killed Jiang Luma in front of Xie Gao and the other two deacons. In the end, Xie Gao and the other deacon acted as if they didn't see anything and turned to leave with a dark face. The feeling of being lawless is not bad. Jiang Chun chuckled. Jiang Chun knew that Xie Gao couldn't wait to kill him. Unfortunately, even the full power of the broken formation couldn't do anything to Jiang Chun. As such, as long as Jiang Chun hadn't entered the Central Court, Jiang Chun could be said to be lawless in the outer courtyard. No one could do anything to him. Jiang Chun stopped where he was for a while, before he kept moving forward. Half an hour later, he passed through the gate of the second outer courtyard and entered the first outer courtyard. Further ahead was the Central Court and the lower court. At this moment, the road to the Central Court and the lower court was filled with people. There was no lack of exalted realm cultivators among them. A few of them had even reached the middle stage of the exalted realm. These people seemed to be in a group. They stood in groups of 2s and 3s, and their eyes were fixed on a young man in the middle. It seemed that they were all waiting for the young man to speak. Let me introduce myself. My name is, at this moment, the young man had a confident smile on his face. After coughing a few times, he spoke in a seemingly carefree manner. However, before he could finish speaking, Jiang Chun had already walked past him. During the entire process, Jiang Chun didn't even look at him. The feeling of being ignored instantly enraged the young man. I'm talking to you. Aren't you rude if you don't listen to me first? The young man said coldly. After waving his hand, 6 young men at the lower stage of the exalted realm stood in front of Jiang Chun. You say your thing, and I'll go mine. Why should I listen to you? Jiang Chun said softly. The brilliance of the sun and moon flickered in his eyes. He said coldly, This is the outer court. The outer court's disciplinary hall is nothing to me. If you move aside, this matter will be over. If you don't, there will be no more of you in the Billowing Wave Academy. As soon as he said that, the 6 young men standing in front of Jiang Chun trembled. After all, Jiang Chun's name had already spread throughout the outer court. If even a 90% power lousy formation couldn't hurt him, Then it was obvious how strong he was. To be honest, these 6 young men really didn't want to have a conflict with Jiang Chun. A 90% power lousy formation, right? The young man said disdainfully. I could take it too. What does that have to do with me? Jiang Chen's voice gradually turned cold. I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to move aside or not? Beat him up. The young man was even more direct. He waved his hand and roared angrily. The 6 young men obeyed his order and attacked. It seems like before I become a disciple of the middle court, I can be lawless one more time. Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows and stomped on the ground. The power of heaven and earth roared like a tide. Like a ripple, it spread out with Jiang Chun as the center. Wherever it passed, the 6 young men were all sent flying. After they fell to the ground, they didn't wake up. Their life force was extremely weak, and they were close to death. Then, Jiang Chen turned around and looked at the young man. He asked, "Who are you?" "Qi Yi of the Martial Pavilion." The young man raised his eyebrows and said, "Please enlighten me." Boom! The moment he finished speaking, Qi Yi rushed out. The long sword in his hand was connected to the ground, and sword flowers bloomed one after another. The sword Qi was like a rainbow, and the sword flowers were like starlight. Layer upon layer, they were densely packed. In an instant, Jiang Chun was drowned in them. "Is that all you've got? You still want me to enlighten you?" Jiang Chen's voice came from under the sword light and sword flowers. Then, with a loud explosion, the sword light and sword flowers that filled the sky were shattered. As for Jiang Chun, he was standing where he had been, unharmed. His figure was tall and straight, like a vigorous ancient tree. His hair danced in the wind, and when he opened his eyes, the light of the sun and moon flickered. Chapter 238. At that moment, Jiang Chun pointed his finger, and a purplish gold vine condensed at the tip of his finger. Like a dragon, it shot towards Qi Yi. Whoosh! The purplish gold vine shot towards Qi Yi at an incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, it was right in front of Qi Ye's face. Sword formation. Mini 8 desolation. Qi Yi reacted quickly. He stabbed the sword in his hand into the ground, and runes appeared around him, forming a formation in an instant. Within the formation, sword radiance flashed, and shadows of sharp swords appeared, slashing towards the vine. Unfortunately, against the Emperor's vine, the power of these sharp swords was not enough. Clanging sounds could be heard as the shadows of the sharp swords shattered, and the sword radiance dissipated. However, the purplish gold vine was not damaged at all. In the end, the purplish gold vine pierced through Qi Ye's chest, crushing his heart. It was a direct kill. "What are you looking at?" At that moment, Jiang Chen looked at Xie Gao with a smile on his face. This guy had followed him all the way here, as if he was hoping that someone would defeat Jiang Chun, cripple him, or even kill him. However, it was a pity that these disciples of the outer courtyard were no different from ants to Jiang Chun. Just you wait." Xie Gao's face darkened. He really could not do anything to Jiang Chun. After all, the outer yard's disciplinary hall was just a decoration to Jiang Chun. It was completely useless. Although the rules of the outer yard's disciplinary hall had been changed because of Jiang Chun, it was still useless. Qi Yi is from the Martial Pavilion. If you kill him, the Martial Pavilion will not let you go. Xie Gao said coldly. There are many people from the Martial Pavilion in the Billow Academy. Just wait for their revenge. Martial Pavilion? It's not the first time I've gone against the Martial Pavilion. Jiang Chun curled his lips and continued walking. Swoosh! However, suddenly, a sword radiance shot out and slashed the back of Jiang Chen's head. At the same time, Qi Yi, who was supposed to be dead, actually stood up. Got it? Qi Yi laughed maniacally. With a long sword in his hand, his expression was ferocious and even a little deranged. There was a burning rune on his chest. That was a death substitute talisman that could save his life. Otherwise, Jiang Chen's strike from before would have been sufficient to annihilate him. Feigning death, suddenly attacking, and then killing Jiang Chun. This was what Qi Yi was thinking. You got it? What do you mean? However, at this moment, Jiang Chen slowly turned around with a disdainful smile on his face. He touched the back of his head and muttered, "You're quite powerful. You cut off a strand of my hair." At this moment, everyone was speechless. Even Xie Gao was confused. As for Qi Yi, his eyes were wide open, unable to believe what he was seeing. An all-out attack, and a sneak attack at that, only managed to cut off a single strand of Jiang Chen's hair? A strand of hair? That's a death substitute talisman, right? That's quite precious. Jiang Chen looked at the rune on Qi Ye's chest and asked mockingly, Do you still have a death substitute talisman? If not, Deacon Xie Gao, save me." At this moment, Qi Yi was completely flustered. He was almost crying as he ran towards Xie Gao. He knew that only Xie Gao could save him at this moment. "Do you think you can run?" Jiang Chen said softly. A gust of wind blew under his feet, and he moved like a ghost. Whoosh! Whoosh! Jiang Chen shuttled through the air and appeared in front of Qi Yi in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Qi Yi and Xie Gao were only 10 meters apart. To an honorable realm cultivator, 10 meters could be crossed in less than a breath. But now, this distance of 10 meters was like the distance between hell and heaven to Qi Yi. "Stop! I, as a deacon, order you to stop," Xie Gao said anxiously. Poof! However, Jiang Chen did not care about Xie Gao at all. He raised his hand and slammed it down on Qi Ye's head. This time, Qi did not have a death substitute talisman with him. Qi Ye's head shattered and a red and white substance shot out from his head. He was dead. "Kid, this time no one can save you," Xie Gao said coldly. However, he was secretly delighted with Xie Gao's strength. If he was willing to protect Qi Yi, Jiang Chen would not be able to kill Qi Yi. However, Xie Gao did not do anything. He did not even think about saving Qi Yi. This was because Qi Yi died in front of Xie Gao. Before Qi Yi died, Xie Gao had tried to stop him. In this way, Jiang Chen's mistake this time wasn't as simple as killing a sibling disciple. You killed a fellow disciple in public and challenged the authority of the disciplinary hall. "As a deacon, I sentence you to death," Xie Gao said solemnly. "How sanctimonious." Jiang Chen curled his lips, then suddenly laughed and asked, "You're the outer yard deacon, right?" Xie Gao was taken aback. He nodded and said, "Yes, so what? The matters of the middle yard disciples are not under your control, right?" Jiang Chen asked, "You still want to run?" Xie Gao reacted quickly. He immediately took a step forward and rushed towards Jiang Chen. Unfortunately, Jiang Chen had already used the 9 words of battle. He moved like the wind and rushed towards the middle yard and lower yard. All the energy in his body gathered under his feet. Purplish gold vines gathered behind his back and turned into purplish gold wings that flapped violently. At this moment, Jiang Chen's speed had reached its peak. This kid's speed! Xie Gao was shocked. He could not catch up with Jiang Chen even though he tried his best to chase after him. What was even more infuriating was that Jiang Chen kept looking back as he ran. He said mockingly, "Come and catch me. Come and catch me, kid. I'm going to kill you." Xie Gao was furious. His face was red. However, it was a pity that Xie Gao could not catch up with Jiang Chen until he passed through the first yard of the outer yard and entered the lower yard of the middle yard. After a while, Jiang Chen stood in front of the gate of the lower yard of the middle yard. Xie Gao stood in the outer yard, facing each other. "I'm now a lower yard disciple of the middle yard. You want to punish a lower yard disciple as a deacon of the outer yard discipline hall?" Jiang Chen asked with a smile. "Is it appropriate?" Xie Gao opened his mouth, but did not know what to say. He was extremely sullen. He had thought he would be able to kill Jiang Chen easily this time if he took action personally. Who would have thought that this kid would run so fast? Moreover, he was taunting him as he ran. What made Xie Gao feel the most helpless was that the rules of the Billow Academy were too strict. As an outer yard deacon, he could not punish a middle yard disciple. "I'll report this to the middle yard discipline hall. Just you wait," Xie Gao said coldly with a gloomy face. "Okay, I'll wait," Jiang Chen said with a smile. Then he waved at Xie Gao and said, "Goodbye." Chapter 239. The middle and lower houses were huge, much bigger than the three outer houses combined. There were more than 10 palaces here, including the Elixir Pavilion, the Martial Pavilion, and the Array Pavilion. These three pavilions had some connections with the top 3 academies. Some people who cultivated in the Billowing Waves Academy would enter these 3 pavilions after graduation. It was also because of this that the inner workings of the top 3 academies were not as simple as they seemed on the surface. At this moment, Jiang Chun went to report to them and then went into his abode. Starting from the middle house, every disciple had their own cultivation cave abode. Everything in the cave abode was well equipped. There were spirit gathering formations for cultivation, elixir furnaces for elixir refinement, talisman papers for cultivation formations, and even some herbs. At this moment, Jiang Chen started to practice as soon as he entered the cave. There were obviously fewer disciples in the middle and lower houses than in the 3 outer houses. However, there were more than 500 people. Half a day later, Jiang Chen was cultivating when someone came to the cave abode with a silk letter. Bai Fengyu? After opening the silk letter, Jiang Chen realized that it was a letter from Bai Fengyu. After reading the letter, Jiang Chen knew that Bai Fengyu had also left and returned to White Emperor City after he left the 4 Directions Divine Courtyard. At the same time, Nayland Mayer and Mo Xingtian had also left. Zhang Lu had also suddenly disappeared. No one knew where he went. As for Nian Chang'e, she had also returned to the Heavenly Temple. Of course, other than Zhang Lu, who was nowhere to be found, the others were safe. As for the 9 Nether Phoenix, Jiang Chun did not care about her. That old bird was very clever. In addition, her cultivation had recovered well, so she should be fine. If something really happened, Jiang Chun would be able to sense it immediately with the contract. It's been a while since I was reborn. It's also been a while since I left the Chuanzuan sect. Jiang Chun said softly. I'll find some time to go back to the Chuanzuan sect. Then Jiang Chun sat down cross-legged again. He was going to continue practicing. However, at this moment, a few more people came to the cave abode. There were a total of 3 people. What made Jiang Chen speechless was that these 3 people were obviously looking for him. But before they even entered the immortal cave, the 3 of them started fighting outside the immortal cave. According to the situation, the 3 of them were obviously fighting in private. This was a violation of the Wave Academy's rules, and they would be severely punished. Face dark, Jiang Chen stepped out of the Immortal's cave and said, "Hey, you 3, fighting outside of my Immortal's cave. Aren't you afraid you'll disturb my cultivation?" However, it was as if the 3 of them did not hear Jiang Chen's words and continued fighting. Moreover, the way the 3 of them fought was as if they were fighting to the death. Every move was fatal. This puzzled Jiang Chen and made him even more confused. A death match was naturally a battle of life and death. On the other hand, if a life was lost in a private battle, the punishment would be much more severe. According to the rules of the Wave Academy, this was a life for a life. Jiang Chun was naturally not afraid of the Wave Academy's rules because the power of these rules was limited. Jiang Chun could withstand them. Just like when he was in the outer court, Jiang Chun could withstand the punishment even if he killed someone. In that case, could the 3 of them withstand the punishment of the discipline hall? That's impossible, right? Jiang Chun frowned and did not believe it. After all, Jiang Chun could see through the strength of the 3 people in front of him. The 3 of them were at the middle level of the honorable realm, but they were not geniuses. In that case, it would be difficult for them to withstand the punishment of the discipline hall. Boom! Boom! After the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, the 3 of them ended their battle after a few explosions. 2 of them were severely injured, and 1 of them was lightly injured. At this moment, the 3 of them were fighting in a triangular formation. They sized each other up and finally looked at Jiang Chun. Martial Pavilion's Chun Bo is here to challenge Jiang Chun. After a few breaths, the slightly injured young man spoke and pointed in a direction in the distance. Do you dare to take a trip to the Ring of Life and Death? Elixir Association Zhang Xiao is here to invite fellow cultivator Jiang Chun to join the Elixir Pavilion under the orders of the Wave Academy's Elixir Pavilion branch. Another young man spoke hastily. Then, the remaining young man spoke. He was from the Array Pavilion and had also come to invite Jiang Chun to join the Array Pavilion. Oh, one of you is here to fight me, and the other two are here to rope me in? Jiang Chun blinked his eyes and tilted his head. He asked with a smile, "What if I don't agree? Are you afraid?" Martial Pavilion's Chun Bo said disdainfully, "That's right. A person like you is like a stray dog that has been kicked out of the Jiang clan and abandoned by the Sifong Divine Institute. To you have no home at all. Naturally, you're like a stray dog. A person like you probably doesn't care about the so-called dignity, confidence, and face anymore, right?" Hearing this, Jiang Chun nodded with a smile and said, "Yes, you're right. So, fellow cultivator Jiang Chun, our Elixir Pavilion sincerely invites you to join us," Zhang Xiu said with a serious expression. He even took out a silk letter. It was a handwritten order from the Elixir Pavilion's Pavilion Master of the Wave Academy. At the same time, the young man from the Array Pavilion also took out a handwritten order. It represented the Pavilion Master of the Wave Academy's Array Pavilion. "I've just arrived at the Wave Academy and entered the Middle Academy. How much do the Elixir Pavilion and the Array Pavilion know about me?" Jiang Chun asked. "Why do you want me to join the Elixir Pavilion and the Array Pavilion?" Hearing this, Zhang Xiu and the young man from the Array Pavilion didn't know what to say. They had only come under orders, so they were already confused. Now that they heard Jiang Chun's words, how could they answer him? "Today, I'll fight you to the death. You have to fight me whether you want to or not." At this moment, Uncle Chun waved his hand. In an instant, a blood-red token flew to Jiang Chun's face. Jiang Chun's eyes narrowed. The light of the sun and moon flickered in his pupils, which turned into an invisible hand and caught the token. Upon closer inspection, the token was completely blood-red. On both sides, the word "kill" was carved. Blood Battle Token? The only 3 Blood Battle tokens in the Middle Academy? At this moment, Zhang Xiu and the other young man widened their eyes. They even broke out in cold sweat on behalf of Jiang Chun. One had to know that under the circumstances of using the Blood Battle Token, Jiang Chun couldn't refuse Chun Bo's death match. Otherwise, Jiang Chun would be seen as violating the Wave Academy's rules. His cultivation would be crippled, and he would be expelled from the Wave Academy. As for Jiang Chun, although he hadn't been in the Wave Academy for a long time, he had some understanding of some things in the Wave Academy. In particular, Jiang Chun had specially inquired about the Blood Battle Token. Only those who had made great contributions in the Wave Academy would be given the Blood Battle Token. Those who possessed the Blood Battle Token could not only exempt themselves from a mistake, but they could also force others to fight to the death. Those who were challenged couldn't refuse. Therefore, to many people, the Blood Battle Token was equivalent to a death token. To some people, it was more like a death token. "It seems like I have to accept this battle?" Jiang Chun raised his eyebrows. He didn't dare to resist the Blood Battle Token. This was because once he resisted, the Dean of the Middle Academy's Lower Academy would personally cripple Jiang Chun and expel him from the Wave Academy. Jiang Chun didn't know what cultivation level the Dean of the Middle Academy's Lower Academy had reached, but he reckoned that he wouldn't be able to deal with him. Therefore, if he didn't want to be crippled or expelled from the Wave Academy, Jiang Chun could only accept the challenge. 3 days later, when Xiao Qingyi returns, it will be the time to fight to the death with you. At that time, I'll see you in the life and death arena. Chun Bo raised his chin with a proud expression. Even when he looked at Jiang Chun, it was as if he was looking at a dead person. It was as if in Chun Bo's eyes, once Jiang Chun fought with that person called Xiao Qingyi, he would die without a doubt. Xiao Qingyi? He's back from training outside? Undead Xiao Qingyi? At this moment, before Jiang Chun could react, Zhang Xiu and the other youth couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. This was because Xiao Qingyi was too famous among all the disciples of the Middle Academy and Lower Academy. He was a valiant figure ranked 11th among all the disciples of the Middle Academy and Lower Academy. He was also a necromancer. Of course, according to Shao Qingyi's cultivation level, he could be called a necromancer supremacy. He was a mid-level supremacy realm necromancer. Jiang Qin didn't care about this. In his eyes, who in the Middle Academy and Lower Academy could be his match? Not to mention that he had broken through to the supremacy realm now. Even if he hadn't, Jiang Qin was confident that he could defeat Shao Qingyi. As for what the other party's profession was, Jiang Qin didn't care at all. After all, to someone who was proficient in all professions, what did your profession have to do with him? You will, I will. You won't, I will too. 3 days later, right? All right, I'll see you in the life and death arena in 3 days, Jiang Qin said softly. He put away the blood battle token and turned around to close the door of the cave abode. However, at this moment, Zhang Xiao and the other youth hurriedly asked for Jiang Qin's opinion. However, Jiang Qin shook his head decisively. He said, the Formation Pavilion and the Elixir Pavilion invited me to join them, but they didn't mention the reason. They also didn't mention what benefits I would get if I joined them. Why should I accept them? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.